Focus.
Asher barked, his voice sharp and commanding. They'll twist your senses with illusions. Watch for the patterns. Intent always bleeds through the cracks. The battlefield dissolved into chaos. Shimmering mirages danced between flashes of steel, flickering with deception. Emily stood at the edge, arms folded, a quiet smile playing on her lips. Though tasked with protecting him, she remained still. This was Asher's trial, and she trusted his instincts. Asher surged forward, a blur of red and shadow, his scythe cleaving arcs of crimson through the distorted battlefield. His strikes were measured, each one disrupting illusion and forcing the enemy to confront him in truth. His team mirrored his resolve, adapting their own styles to match the unpredictable onslaught. A D-rank Métis warrior raised his arms, conjuring a radiant barrier, a trap of light meant to imprison them within a maze of false paths. Asher's eyes narrowed. Power surged through his limbs as his scythe flared, drenched in the aura of sanguine supremacy.
He swung.
The wall fractured like brittle glass, shards of light scattering into the wind. "Is that it?" he called out, voice steady, taunting. "You'll have to do better." Floating above the chaos, Tur chuckled. Reclining in the air like a man enjoying a show, he tilted his head. "The Magnus heir has some teeth. Let's see if he has fangs." As if summoned by his words, stronger Métis warriors emerged from the veil of shadows. Their presence warped the battlefield, oppressive and unyielding. One figure, a mid-tier D-rank, stepped forward. His aura struck like ice across exposed skin. "You've done well with the fodder," he said, eyes locked on Asher. "But this is the end of your ascent." Asher's grip tightened around his scythe. His crimson gaze met the challengers without flinching. "You think so?" he replied calmly. Emily observed in silence, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. She could sense it, Asher was hiding something. Tur, too, leaned in slightly, his amusement sharpening. Asher danced through the battlefield, relaxed yet alert. He fought like someone with more to give, because he did. He kept a leash on his strength, using no more than half of his power. To reveal too much would invite suicide tactics. The Métis couldn't know what he was capable of. And still he killed them, cleanly, efficiently. You plundered 2% of your opponent's agility. You plundered 5% of your opponent's mana. Each fallen foe offered more than just a victory. Asher's unique ability rewarded him with unpredictable spoils, percentages of power, fragments of technique, flashes of skill. He was growing stronger by the kill. The tide of battle shifted as doubt crept into the enemy's ranks. Their numbers, once their strength, now felt like a trap. Some glanced upward, searching Tur's face for direction. He offered none, only a half-lidded smile of faint intrigue. Asher sensed the shift and feigned exhaustion. His shoulders sagged ever so slightly. He parried with slower reactions, letting strikes graze his defense to maintain the illusion. The enemy, deceived by his act, charged again with renewed aggression. You plundered 1% of strength. You plundered 4% of stamina. You acquired the lesser ability, Mirage Strike. The rhythm of battle became his symphony, measured, deliberate, and deadly. The Métis ranks thinned. Their confidence began to fracture. Then, silence. A towering figure stepped forward. His mere presence demanded attention, and his aura silenced the battlefield. "Enough games, human," he growled. "This ends now." His hands shimmered with dark energy, an ominous force that cracked the air around him. Asher tilted his head, a subtle smile touching his lips. "Let's test that." He no longer held back entirely. The next moments were a blur of fury and finesse. Asher's strikes bit deeper, his steps faster, sharper. Shockwaves tore through the clearing as the two clashed. The Métis warrior fought with unrestrained ferocity, but Asher's restraint was a blade in itself, precise, chilling, intentional. Even Tur raised an eyebrow. Finally, the warrior fell, thudding against the earth with the finality of a bell toll. You plundered 6% of strength. You plundered 8% of stamina. You acquired the lesser ability, Void Slash. Tur clapped slowly, the sound echoing through the hushed field. "Well done," he drawled, voice thick with amusement. "But I wonder, how long can you keep up this little charade?" Asher's expression was calm, unreadable. "I don't know what you're talking about." Tur's smile widened. "Of course you don't. Very well, enjoy your victories while they last. The real game hasn't even begun." Tur chuckled, his gaze sharp enough to cut through lies. "Oh, I think you know exactly what I mean. But it doesn't matter, for now, enjoy your little triumph. Let's see how far you make it before the real trials begin." With those parting words, Tur rose gracefully, his presence withdrawing like a fading storm. He gave a subtle hand gesture, and the remaining Métis warriors vanished into the shadows as if they'd never been there. Asher stood still, his scythe lowered. He watched her disappear into the horizon, his expression unreadable. The camp was in ruins. Fires still smoldered. Silence hung heavy over the battlefield. Rylan stepped forward from the perimeter, offering a warm smile. "Congratulations, young master. You've passed your first test." Asher gave a small nod, composed as ever. He had expected something like this. Being stationed at the outpost wasn't a simple assignment, it was a gauntlet meant to judge worth. And now, he had earned his place. "What's my score?" he asked, voice calm and direct. Rylan's smirk deepened. "High enough to earn you a place in the outer area of the Mirian outpost." Asher's brow lifted slightly, intrigued. He already knew the implications. The Mirian outpost was stratified by power. The periphery hosted E and D rank warriors, rookies, scouts, and trainees. The outer area was for C to A rank fighters, a true battleground. The inner area belonged to the elites, A ranks through SSS. The central core was near legendary, home to ancient monsters in human skin. For an E rank to be sent to the outer area, it wasn't a promotion. It was a challenge. "They're pushing me," Asher muttered under his breath. "Testing how high I can climb." "Exactly," Rylan confirmed. "The outer area is unforgiving. You'll face real threats, C ranks regularly, B ranks occasionally. And in your case, expect opponents 2, maybe 3 ranks higher." Asher gave a quiet nod. He was ready. "You depart now," Rylan said. "Your quarters are prepared. Emily will accompany you." Without needing instruction, Emily stepped forward and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. A soft hum of light surrounded them as she activated her teleportation ability. In an instant, the broken landscape of the periphery vanished, and they reappeared in the outer area. Asher inhaled deeply. The difference was immediate. The air here was charged, electric with strength. No chatter, no carelessness. Every step echoed with purpose. No mortals. No low-tier awakeners. Only warriors. Asher scanned the surroundings. Powerful auras pulsed like quiet drums beneath the surface. Each individual here had crossed the boundary of mortality, and stayed on the other side. They approached the massive gate to the outer area's residential zone. 2 armored guards observed Asher in silence. Their eyes dropped to the crest on his chest, the Magnus insignia, etched in gleaming metal. No questions. No hesitation. They stepped aside. Asher entered. The outer area unfolded like a military city. Warriors moved with machine-like precision. Training fields stretched across the landscape, filled with combatants sparring under strict regimens. The weakest of them would have been monsters in the periphery. Asher walked calmly through it all. The gazes of others flicked toward him, curious, appraising. He ignored them. This was the battlefield where the real elite earned their stripes. Emily followed a few steps behind, scanning every movement, every shifting aura. Ever watchful, ever silent. Eventually, they arrived at the Magnus camp, a sleek fortified enclave bearing the house's colors. Though smaller than the periphery's quarters, it was far more advanced. Polished armor stood on display. Weapons gleamed under protective enchantments. The family's legacy was etched into every wall. A stern-looking man approached, uniformed and decorated with honors. He bowed. "Young Master Asher Magnus. Welcome. Your arrival was expected. Your private quarters and training schedule are prepared." Asher offered a nod. "I trust everything meets the Magnus standard." "They will exceed it," the overseer promised, gesturing toward a sleek metallic structure behind him. Before they could continue, Asher felt the weight of several stares. A group of warriors nearby had paused mid-training. Their eyes were locked on him, not with disrespect, but with curiosity. Among them stood a tall figure clad in golden armor, features sharp and commanding. His insignia marked him as a high-tier commander. Their eyes met briefly. A silent exchange passed between them. Not of hostility, but of challenge. Asher didn't look away. He didn't need to. This was his new battlefield. And he had just arrived.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Before Asher could proceed, a group of warriors training nearby turned their attention toward him. Their gazes lingered, filled with curiosity and perhaps a hint of challenge. Among them was a tall, muscular man with sharp features and an air of command. His golden armor and the insignia on his chest marked him as a high-ranking warrior, possibly a commander in the outer area. The man approached, his steps purposeful. So, this is the Magnus elite who's been assigned to the outer area, he said, his tone laced with mild amusement. I'm Auden. Rank A, and one of the overseers for this sector. Asher regarded him with a neutral expression, neither intimidated nor overly friendly. Asher Magnus. Rank E, but I'm sure the ranking system doesn't tell the whole story. Arden chuckled, his sharp eyes studying Asher closely. Confident, aren't you? I hope you can back it up. We don't have room for slackers here. You'll see soon enough, Asher replied coolly, his tone even. Arden smirked, clearly intrigued. Good. We'll be watching. Welcome to the outer area, Asher Magnus. Prove yourself worthy of the name. With that, Arden turned and walked away, his group following close behind. The tension in the air dissipated slightly, but the unspoken challenge lingered. As Arden left, a woman approached Asher. She had golden hair tied neatly in a bun, striking blue eyes, and was dressed in sharp business attire. Her presence exuded authority and professionalism. Asher Magnus, come with me. I'll explain the rules and regulations here, she said. Asher nodded and followed her. First of all, she began, once you're settled in, you must always be prepared to be summoned at any time. The invaders can strike without warning. Second, she continued, you are now just a soldier here. When you see your superiors, you will salute them, like me. She turned to face him, and Asher immediately placed his right hand over his chest, just above the Magnus insignia, and bowed respectfully. Laura nodded in approval. Good. At least you understand discipline, she said. She then gestured to a nearby area where several teenagers around Asher's age were gathered. Many appeared disheveled, and even the girls wore tattered skirts, with their faces marked by exhaustion. They're the undisciplined ones who thought they could act however they pleased, Laura explained, her voice stern. Their punishments are visible for all to see. Some of the girls are only partially clothed because they disregarded the dress code or failed to follow basic etiquette. Asher's gaze swept across the group, noting the stark contrast between their treatment and the order maintained elsewhere in the camp. We don't have tolerance for insubordination here, not even for the girls, Laura added, answering the silent question lingering in Asher's mind. Understanding the harsh standards of the outer area, Asher said nothing, choosing instead to absorb the lessons from this exchange. Laura motioned for him to follow as she continued to explain the rules, ensuring he understood what was expected of him in this unforgiving environment. Asher followed Laura further into the camp, the atmosphere around them growing more intense. Soldiers marched in strict formations, their faces hardened by experience. The occasional burst of activity, whether from training drills or emergency preparations, only reinforced the seriousness of the environment. Laura led him to a modest but clean barracks where several individuals, all clearly seasoned warriors, were gathered. She gestured toward an empty bed. This will be your quarters, she said. Keep it tidy and functional. No personal luxuries are permitted beyond what is absolutely necessary. You're here to fight, not to live comfortably. Asher nodded silently, placing his few belongings down on the bed. Laura continued, you'll be assigned to Squad Alpha 17. Your squad leader is Captain Renard. He'll brief you on your upcoming missions and daily responsibilities. Just as she finished speaking, a tall, muscular man with sharp green eyes and a rugged face approached. His uniform was immaculate, adorned with the insignia of a seasoned officer. Magnus? He asked, his voice rough but commanding. Yes, Captain, Asher replied, standing at attention. Renard gave him a once-over, his gaze appraising but not unkind. You've got the look of someone who's been through a few skirmishes. Good. But don't think your name or your bloodline will earn you any favors here. In this squad, everyone proves their worth through action. Clear. Crystal clear, Asher responded, meeting his gaze confidently. Enjoy new adventures from my virtual library empire. Renard gave a small nod of approval. Good. Meet me at the training grounds in 20 minutes. We've got work to do. As the captain walked away, Laura turned back to Asher. One final thing, she said. This isn't the periphery anymore. Mistakes here won't just cost you your pride, they'll cost you your life. Remember that. Laura turned her gaze to Emily, her tone firm but respectful. You can return to the Magnus camp and resume your duties there, but Asher is required to remain here. This is his assignment now. Emily nodded without hesitation. Despite Laura only being an A rank, Emily knew better than to question the hierarchy. In the military, rank on the battlefield wasn't solely determined by power but by authority and position. Laura's rank as a commanding officer here superseded Emily's standing as an elite, at least within this context. Understood, Emily said, her voice calm as she glanced at Asher. Take care, young master. Remember, I'm just a message away if you ever need assistance. Asher offered a small nod in return, appreciating her unwavering loyalty. Laura, satisfied with the exchange, added, good. Now that's settled, let's focus on ensuring Asher integrates into this camp properly. He'll need discipline and readiness to face the challenges ahead. With that, Emily gave a final glance at Asher, a flicker of concern crossing her face before she teleported away, leaving him in the hands of the outer area's command. Asher turned back to Laura, who had already started walking away. Come on, Magnus. There's no time to waste. Your training starts now. Her sharp tone made it clear, there would be no special treatment here. Asher had stepped into a new world, one where his lineage and potential wouldn't shield him from the harsh reality of war. Asher looked down at himself, now clad in the standard military uniform. His once impressive and powerful magical garments had been replaced by a practical black and blue military outfit that reminded him of the uniforms often seen in elite U.S. forces. He adjusted the fabric briefly, feeling its unfamiliar weight, before making his way to the training camp. Arriving there, he observed the area bustling with activity. Dozens of recruits, all clad in the same uniform, moved with purpose. Some were engaged in drills, while others practiced combat techniques. A commanding figure, the captain, approached with an air of authority. His sharp eyes swept over the gathered recruits as he came to a stop before them. Standing tall, he addressed the 30 individuals assembled in formation. Welcome to Alpha Squad 17, the captain said, his voice steady and commanding. All eyes turned toward him, including Asher's, as the recruits took in his words with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. My name is Renard Liv, and I am the captain of this squad, he said, his sharp gaze sweeping over the group as he led them through the introductory routine. I know many of you are probably wondering, who is this commoner? Renard chuckled lightly, clearly aware of the dismissive glances from some of the recruits. So, let me make this simple for all of you, he continued. I'll give you an offer, anyone who defeats me now will take my place as captain from this moment onward. His challenge rang out clearly, sparking murmurs among the group. Asher smirked faintly, thinking to himself, he's a rank. What can a bunch of E-rankers like us possibly do to him? He wasn't fooled by the captain's theatrics. This was clearly a lesson in humility for the squad. It was a challenge destined to fail, but it was also an opportunity for the prideful to embarrass themselves. Sure enough, someone stepped forward. A young woman with long blonde hair and a haughty demeanor strode confidently onto the field. Her gaze was full of defiance as she declared, I'll challenge you. The other recruits watched in silence, some wide-eyed and others whispering among themselves. It was clear that she came from a noble lineage, her polished stance and self-assuredness radiating privilege. Renard raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement flashing in his eyes. Very well, he said calmly. Step forward and show me what you've got. The tension in the air thickened as the impromptu duel began. Continue your journey on my virtual library empire. The crowd of recruits backed away to give the two combatants space. The blonde woman unsheathed a sword from her side, a finely crafted blade with an intricate hilt adorned with her family crest. She held it with practiced precision, clearly trained in high-level swordsmanship. Renard, on the other hand, stood calmly with his arms crossed, not even bothering to draw a weapon. Whenever you're ready, he said, his tone mocking but steady, as though the outcome was already decided. The woman gritted her teeth at his nonchalance and lunged forward, her sword glowing faintly as she channeled her mana into it. She executed a flawless overhead slash, the force of her strike enough to cause a gust of wind to ripple through the training grounds. Renard didn't flinch. With a casual step to the side, he avoided the blow entirely. The blade struck the ground with a loud clang, kicking up dust. Too predictable, he said, his voice carrying across the field. Before the woman could recover, Renard moved faster than anyone could follow. In an instant, he was behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder. You're done, he whispered. With a light push, she stumbled forward, her sword falling from her hands as she hit the ground. She spun around, glaring up at him, but there was no denying her defeat. First lesson, Renard announced, turning to address the group. Strength and pride don't mean anything if you can't read your opponent. You can't win with raw power alone. The recruits exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement while others remained skeptical. Renard turned back to the fallen noblewoman, offering her a hand. Good effort, he said, pulling her to her feet. She accepted reluctantly, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Anyone else? Renard asked, looking around the group. His gaze landed briefly on Asher, who stood silently, observing the scene with a faint smirk. The recruits shifted uncomfortably, but no one else stepped forward. Good, Renard said, clapping his hands together. Then let's move on. Training begins now. And trust me, you'll need it. As the group dispersed, Asher couldn't help but chuckle quietly to himself. This squad might have potential after all. Let's see what you've got, Captain Renard. As the squad began their training, Renard led them to a large open area equipped with various weapons, dummies, and obstacle courses. All right, Renard began, his voice commanding. We're going to start with something simple. Combat evaluation. I need to see where each of you stands. Pair up and spar. Use everything you've got, magic, weapons, abilities. I need to see your strengths and your weaknesses. The recruits shuffled uneasily, forming pairs. Asher noticed that most of the recruits were sizing up their opponents, trying to find someone weaker to ensure an easy victory. He chuckled at their hesitation but stayed quiet, waiting to see who would approach him. A burly man with a scar running down his face strode toward Asher, a confident smirk on his lips. Looks like you're the odd one out, he said, cracking his knuckles. Let's see what you've got, rookie. Asher gave a slight nod, his expression calm. Sure, he said, stepping into the makeshift arena the others had formed. The scarred man drew a massive axe from his back, its blade glowing faintly with runes. Don't hold back, he said, his grin widening. I won't. Asher tilted his head, his crimson eyes glinting with amusement. I'll try not to disappoint. The crowd gathered around, murmurs spreading about the upcoming match. Most seemed to think Asher would be crushed. Begin. Renard barked, his voice cutting through the chatter. The scarred man charged, his axe swinging in a wide arc. The sheer force of the swing created a shockwave that sent dust and debris flying. But Asher didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his hands in his pockets as the blade came hurtling toward him. At the last possible moment, he stepped aside, the axe missing him by inches and slamming into the ground. But Asher didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his hands in his pockets as the blade came hurtling toward him. At the last possible moment, he stepped aside, the axe missing him by inches and slamming into the ground. The man growled and swung again, faster this time. Asher sidestepped effortlessly, his movements precise and calculated. Is that all? Asher asked, his tone almost bored. The man roared in frustration, pouring more mana into his weapon. The axe began to glow brighter, radiating an intense heat. He swung once more, this time unleashing a wave of fiery energy toward Asher. This time, Asher moved. In a blur of motion, he was behind his opponent before the fire even reached him. Too slow, Asher said, his voice low. He raised his hand, and his blood-red scythe materialized out of thin air. In one fluid motion, he swung the weapon, stopping just short of the man's neck. The scarred man froze, his eyes wide as he felt the cold edge of the blade against his skin. You lose, Asher said, his voice calm but firm. He stepped back, dismissing his scythe as he turned to walk away. The crowd was silent, stunned by the display. Even Renard raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. Well, Renard said after a moment. It seems we have a prodigy among us. Asher Magnus, was it? You've got talent, I'll give you that. Asher gave a small nod, his expression unreadable. Just doing my part, he said, stepping back into the group. Renard's gaze lingered on him for a moment before he turned to address the rest of the squad. All right, let's keep going. The rest of you, pair up and show me what you've got. And remember, this isn't just about winning. I want to see how you think, how you adapt, and how you fight. As the training continued, Asher stood quietly at the edge of the group, watching and analyzing the others. This squad might be rough around the edges, he thought, but with the right push, they could be something more. Asher observed the squad members sparring, silently analyzing their movements and strategies. Most of them relied heavily on brute force, their techniques lacking refinement. A few showed promise, demonstrating agility or clever use of their abilities, but they were in the minority. Renard walked among the sparring pairs, offering sharp critiques and occasional nods of approval. Don't just swing blindly. Think about your opponent's weaknesses. He barked at one recruit. Turning to another, he added, You're wasting too much mana with every attack. Conserve your energy. Asher watched, his sharp eyes picking up on every flaw and strength. Most of them rely on their ranks to carry them through a fight. They've been taught power equals victory. That mindset will get them killed against stronger enemies. Explore new worlds at my virtual library empire. When the sparring session ended, Renard clapped his hands together, drawing everyone's attention. Not bad for a first session, he said, though his tone made it clear he wasn't particularly impressed. But there's a lot of room for improvement. Remember, out there, you won't have time to make mistakes. You'll either adapt or you'll die. He pointed toward a large obstacle course on the far side of the training ground. Next up is endurance training. The course is designed to push you to your limits. You'll face physical challenges, mana draining traps, and illusions meant to test your focus. Finish it, and you'll have proven you can handle the basics. Fail, and well, let's just say you won't be staying here for long. The recruits groaned, but none dared to voice their complaints. Renard's sharp gaze dared anyone to protest. Asher stepped forward, his expression calm. "Do we run it individually or as a team?" he asked. Renard smirked. "Individually for now. Later, we'll test your ability to work as a unit." The recruits lined up at the starting point of the course, the tension palpable. One by one, they began the grueling trial. The course was brutal: walls of fire, pits of quicksand-like material, and rotating blades that demanded both agility and timing to avoid. Mana-sapping fields left even the more experienced recruits struggling to stay upright by the end. When it was Asher's turn, the other recruits watched closely, eager to see how he would fare. He started at a steady pace, his movements smooth and precise. When faced with the walls of fire, he didn't hesitate, using quick bursts of mana to shield himself as he passed through. The quicksand-like pits barely slowed him down, his powerful leaps carrying him effortlessly across. As for the rotating blades, his timing was impeccable, his movements almost dance-like as he weaved through them. By the time he reached the final stretch, a series of mana-draining illusions designed to disorient and confuse, he hadn't even broken a sweat. The illusions tried to show him horrifying images, but his iron will rendered them ineffective. He passed through without so much as a flinch. When he crossed the finish line, the recruits stared, some in awe, others in envy. Renard clapped slowly, a rare smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Impressive," Renard said, his voice carrying across the training ground. "You've set the bar high, Magnus. Let's see if the rest of them can reach it." Asher said nothing, merely stepping aside to let the next recruit begin. Inside, he felt a flicker of satisfaction. As the day wore on, the recruits continued to tackle the obstacle course, some barely managing to cross the finish line, while others failed entirely. Each failure was met with sharp criticism from Renard, who showed no mercy in pointing out their flaws. "You're not here to be coddled," Renard snapped at a panting recruit who had collapsed halfway through. "Out there, no one will care if you're tired. Either you rise to the occasion or you die. Get up and try again." The recruits who had completed the course sat off to the side, some nursing bruises and others silently fuming at Asher's flawless performance. A group of noble-born recruits, still seething from earlier, whispered among themselves, their gazes frequently darting toward him. "Who does he think he is, showing us up like that?" one of them muttered. "Who does he think he is, showing us up like that?" one of them muttered. Another nodded, his tone bitter. "Just because he's from the Magnus household doesn't mean he's better than us. Explore stories on my virtual library empire. He'll slip up eventually," a third recruit sneered. "No one's perfect." Asher ignored the whispers, his attention focused elsewhere. He wasn't here to make friends or to prove himself to them. His goal was far beyond their petty rivalries. When the last recruit stumbled across the finish line, Renard finally called an end to the session. "That's enough for today," he announced. "Rest up. Tomorrow, we'll be conducting combat drills. If you thought today was hard, you're in for a rude awakening." The recruits groaned but nodded, dragging themselves toward the barracks. Asher followed, his expression calm as ever. Emily had already left earlier, leaving him to navigate the new environment on his own. He welcomed the solitude, it gave him time to reflect and strategize. As he entered the barracks, a group of recruits blocked his path. It was the same group of nobles who had been glaring at him earlier. Their leader, a tall boy with dark hair and sharp features, stepped forward, a smug smirk on his face. "You think you're something special, don't you?" the boy said, his tone dripping with disdain. "Just because you're from the Magnus family doesn't mean you can look down on the rest of us." Asher met his gaze, unfazed. "I don't recall saying anything to you," he replied evenly. "If you have a problem, that's on you." The boy's smirk faltered, replaced by a scowl. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he hissed. "Let's see how clever you are in a fight." The others murmured in agreement, forming a loose circle around Asher. The tension in the air was palpable. Asher sighed, his expression bored. "If this is your way of proving something, then fine," he said, stepping forward. "But don't say I didn't warn you." The boy sneered. Big talk for someone about to get humiliated. Before he could finish, Asher moved. In a blur of motion, he closed the distance, grabbing the boy's arm and twisting it behind his back. The boy cried out in pain, his confidence crumbling in an instant. The other recruits froze, their bravado evaporating as they realized how quickly Asher had taken control of the situation. "I don't have time for your games," Asher said coldly, his voice low and dangerous. "If you want to waste your energy on petty grudges, that's your choice. But if you challenge me again, I won't hold back." With that, he released the boy, who stumbled forward, clutching his arm. The group dispersed quickly, their earlier hostility replaced with fear and respect. Asher continued to his bunk, unbothered by the encounter. "Let them hate me if they want," he thought. "It doesn't matter. My path is clear, and nothing will stand in my way." The tension in the barracks lingered long after the nobles retreated to their bunks, whispering among themselves in subdued voices. Asher ignored them, unpacking his belongings with quiet efficiency. His military-issued gear was Spartan but sufficient, a stark contrast to the opulence of his life in the Magnus household. The barracks soon quieted as the recruits settled in for the night. Asher sat on the edge of his cot, gazing out the narrow window at the stars above. His thoughts drifted to the challenges ahead, combat drills, the looming threats of the outer area, and the shadow of his family's expectations. None of it daunted him, but he knew complacency was a death sentence in this world. Morning came abruptly, with the blaring of a horn that sent everyone scrambling out of their bunks. Asher was already awake, fully dressed and ready by the time Renard entered the barracks. "Move it, you lot," Renard barked. "Drills start in 10 minutes. If you're late, you'll wish you hadn't woken up at all." The recruits groaned but complied, rushing to form ranks outside. The early morning air was brisk, carrying a faint chill that prickled their skin. Renard paced in front of them, his sharp eyes scanning the group. "Today, we separate the soldiers from the fodder," Renard began. "You'll be sparring with each other, and I expect nothing less than your best effort. Fail to meet my standards, and you'll be reassigned to latrine duty for the foreseeable future." He smirked at their collective wince. "Pairs have been pre-assigned. When I call your name, step forward." The recruits stood at attention as Renard read from a list, pairing off fighters based on rank and skill level. Asher waited patiently, his expression neutral. When his name was finally called, Renard's eyes lingered on him with a faint glimmer of amusement. "Asher Magnus, you'll be sparring against Captain Liv." A ripple of shock ran through the group. Whispers broke out among the recruits, their disbelief palpable. "Against the captain? That's not fair. He's going to get destroyed." "Serves him right, acting all high and mighty." Asher didn't react to the murmurs, stepping forward with quiet confidence. Renard grinned, clearly enjoying the tension. "Let's see if the so-called prodigy of the Magnus family can hold his own," Renard said, gesturing toward the sparring ring. Normally, Asher would have avoided a match like this, but the rules here restricted the use of mana, forcing everyone to rely solely on their natural skills and fighting techniques. Realizing this, Asher stepped forward with determination, silently using his system points to max out his combat proficiency, refining his techniques to perfection. "You're impressive, Asher Magnus," Renard said, circling him. "But your overwhelming strength has likely made you neglect the finer aspects of combat technique. That's why I'm fighting you under these conditions." Asher nodded silently, his expression unreadable. Poor Renard had no idea that Asher had just upgraded his skills to the level of a martial arts grandmaster. The match was no longer about proving himself, it was about Asher testing how far he could push his newly honed abilities. The sparring ring fell silent as the other squad members gathered around, their curiosity piqued. Renard stepped forward with a calm, almost predatory confidence, his movements fluid and precise. He carried himself like a man who had honed every fiber of his being for battle. It was evident why he was a captain. His stance alone exuded authority and experience. Asher mirrored him, his posture straight, arms loose but ready. Though his system-enhanced fighting skills made him a martial arts grandmaster in technique, his E-rank body lacked the raw physical power and durability of an A-rank like Renard. This was a battle not just of skill, but of sheer physical superiority. Renard struck first, his movements a blur. A high kick aimed for Asher's temple forced him to duck, but the follow-up punch landed squarely on his ribs. The impact reverberated through Asher's body, sending him staggering back. "Fast," Asher muttered under his breath, wiping his mouth. Renard smirked. "Fast?" "I'm holding back," Renard replied, rushing in again. Asher retaliated with a series of precise strikes, targeting Renard's pressure points. Each move was executed flawlessly, a testament to his grandmaster-level technique. He landed a palm strike on Renard's shoulder and pivoted to deliver a spinning kick aimed at his midsection. Renard grunted but barely flinched. Not bad, Renard said, brushing off the attack like it was nothing. But skill alone won't cut it. Your body can't keep up with me. Renard launched a powerful uppercut that Asher narrowly dodged. Even so, the force of the missed attack sent a gust of wind whipping past Asher's face. Before he could recover, Renard closed the distance, his elbow crashing into Asher's abdomen with crushing force. Asher gasped, his legs wobbling as he struggled to remain standing. You see, Renard said, stepping back to allow Asher a moment to collect himself. This is why rank matters. No matter how skilled you are, you can't make up for the difference in physical capability. Asher straightened up, his gaze steady despite the pain radiating through his body. He wasn't one to give up easily. Summoning his resolve, he switched tactics, using his superior technique to weave around Renard's strikes, landing glancing blows on exposed areas. His hits were precise but lacked the power to deal significant damage. Renard, however, was unrelenting. His movements grew faster and more aggressive, his strikes heavier. He swept Asher's legs out from under him, sending him crashing to the ground. Before Asher could rise, Renard pressed his boot against Asher's chest, pinning him. It's over, Renard said firmly, his voice tinged with respect. You've got talent, Magnus, but you're not ready to face someone like me. Asher stared up at him, breathing heavily. Despite his loss, there was no frustration in his eyes, only determination. This was a lesson he would not forget. Renard removed his foot and offered a hand. Get stronger. With your potential, I want to see how you'll fare next time. Asher took the hand and rose to his feet, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Next time, Captain, I won't lose. The crowd around them murmured in admiration. Even in defeat, Asher had earned their respect with his skill and composure. Renard nodded as he walked away, heading back to his quarters. Once inside, he sighed in relief, leaning back in his chair. Just what do they feed them in the Magnus family? How can he be so strong? He mumbled, glancing at his hand, which was slightly red and sore. If he were even B or C rank, I'd have lost that sparring match, he admitted to himself, shaking his head in disbelief. It's good for us anyway, he added with a smirk. Those Métis bastards were getting cocky lately, flaunting their so-called pride. Now's the time to remind them who's in charge. Renard sat at his desk, picking up his pen as he began writing a detailed report about each member of his squad. Renard carefully jotted down his observations, his sharp mind analyzing each squad member's strengths and weaknesses. Asher Magnus. Strengths: exceptional combat instinct and mastery of martial techniques, despite being limited by his E-rank physique. Shows a willingness to adapt and learn quickly. Potential to be a game-changer in squad engagements. Weaknesses: physical limitations due to current rank. Relies heavily on skill and tactics, which may falter against overwhelming force. Needs to develop better stamina for prolonged engagements. Renard paused, tapping the pen against the desk. He's a diamond in the rough, he muttered, then added, but if he doesn't push through his rank limitations soon, it might cost him. But given he is Magnus and is graduate from World Academy, I guess I don't have to worry about his progress, he mumbled as he closed his file. Renard worked his way down the list, assigning notes and potential training recommendations for each soldier. Most were competent but lacked Asher's spark of genius. It irked him that someone so young, so raw, could still leave such an impression. After finishing the report, Renard leaned back with a sigh, staring at the ceiling. If Magnus keeps this up, he'll not only surpass me but make me look like a fool in front of the higher-ups. He chuckled bitterly. Guess I'll have to sharpen my own skills to keep up with the prodigy. As he closed the file, a faint knock sounded at the door. Enter, he called. A messenger stepped in, saluting crisply. Captain Renard, there's a directive from command. A high-priority mission briefing is scheduled for tomorrow. You and your squad are to attend. Renard nodded. Understood. Dismissed. As the door shut, Renard stood stretching. Looks like we're about to see how this squad handles real danger, he mused. His gaze darkened. I hope the Magnus prodigy is ready. The battlefield shows no mercy. The next morning, the Alpha squad gathered in the briefing room. The air was heavy with anticipation as Renard stood at the front, a tactical map projected behind him. Each member of the squad sat silently, their faces reflecting varying levels of curiosity, concern, and determination. Your next read is at my virtual library empire. Renard cleared his throat, commanding their attention. Listen up. Command has issued a high-priority mission. This isn't a drill or some border patrol assignment. We're moving into hostile territory, enemy-controlled zones. The Métis forces have established a forward operating base deeper in the region, and were tasked with reconnaissance and sabotage. Renard cleared his throat, commanding their attention. Listen up. Command has issued a high-priority mission. This isn't a drill or some border patrol assignment. We're moving into hostile territory, enemy-controlled zones. The Métis forces have established a forward operating base deeper in the region, and were tasked with reconnaissance and sabotage. The room tensed, but Asher remained calm, observing the map with a sharp gaze. The projected image displayed a heavily fortified area surrounded by jagged terrain and dense forests. Our objective, Renard continued, is to confirm enemy numbers, gather intel on their operations, and if the opportunity arises, destroy their key resources. This mission is dangerous. Métis forces in the area are estimated to range from C-rank soldiers to an A-rank commander. Failure is not an option. One soldier raised his hand hesitantly. Captain, if they have an A-rank commander, how do we stand a chance with most of us being E or D rank? Renard's expression hardened. That's why I'm leading this mission. And it's also why we have Magnus here. His eyes landed on Asher, and the squad turned to look at him. Not him, someone else, and she's A rank like me, Renard said, chuckling as he led the way, the squad following closely behind. Asher is like you, an E rank. How do you expect him to kill or defeat a B rank? Maybe he can fight a C rank, but not to the point where he could actually kill them, Renard said, glancing at Asher. Asher nodded in agreement, keeping his expression neutral. Though I can kill a C rank actually, he thought silently but refrained from voicing it. Instead, he mirrored their doubts outwardly, choosing not to expose the full extent of his abilities. Renard smirked. Stay focused, Magnus. You're here to observe and support, not take unnecessary risks. Asher simply nodded again, keeping his thoughts to himself. They soon reached a clearing where they encountered another squad. Leading them was an imposing woman with blue-tinged hair that seemed to flow like flames. Folks, this is Miria Magnus, also known as the Blue Terror, Renard announced. Asher studied her carefully. She was beautiful, but what truly caught his attention was her title. In the Magnus family, elites were given the moniker Terror, to signify their status. Asher himself was destined to earn the name Red Terror, but only if he reached S rank or achieved a significant contribution to the world. So, she's already earned the title of Blue Terror. That means she's done something remarkable, Asher thought, his gaze sharpening. He recalled what the title signified. Blue Terror referred to the perfect integration of two powerful abilities, the Magnus family's Blood Ruler and the Hellion family's Blue Hell Flames. Together, they created a unique power, Blue Blood, combining the destructive heat and intensity of Hellfire with the control and regeneration of blood manipulation. Renard stepped forward, shaking hands with Miria. Good to see you again, Miria. It's been a while since we last worked together. Miria gave a slight nod, her sharp gaze briefly landing on Asher. And this one? The infamous Asher Magnus, I assume. Asher returned her look with a calm expression, silently acknowledging her observation. He knew this encounter would reveal much about his standing within the family and the military. Renard nodded as he addressed his squad. We have a chance to test ourselves against some of the best from each squad, he said, gesturing toward another individual with a punk-style haircut. Meet Herman Grish. He's the best of Miria's squad, Alpha Squad 12. He's a commoner, but he's outperformed many noble family kids in his rank, and yes, even some of mine, Renard added with a chuckle, clearly earning some grudging respect from his own squad. Miria nodded in agreement. Herman has earned his place among us, she said with a sharp tone, silencing any skeptical murmurs. The members of her squad, mostly composed of nobles, gritted their teeth but remained quiet, while Herman smiled confidently, seemingly unfazed by their reactions. Stay connected with my virtual library empire. Asher observed Herman carefully, nodding slightly before returning his gaze to Renard. Renard cleared his throat and continued. Today, Miria and I will oversee the mission personally. As for the rest of you, you'll form teams of 5 and take on the Métis targets in team combat, 5 versus 1. I believe you can handle that, he said with a confident grin. Both squads murmured affirmations, nodding their heads as they prepared for the challenge ahead. Renard then added, but Asher and Herman will work as a team of 2 versus 1. He glanced at both Asher and Herman before continuing. Miria smirked and interjected, relax, we'll take care of the B-rank ones ourselves, leaving only the C ranks for you to fight. She paused, observing the confused expressions on some of their faces. What's the matter? Did you expect a leisurely mission? This is your chance to prove yourselves. The squads quickly straightened up, understanding the gravity of the challenge. Asher and Herman exchanged glances, a mutual acknowledgement of the test they were about to face. Now, go on and form your teams, Renard and Miria said as both squads dispersed to organize themselves. Asher, on the other hand, approached Herman, who was also making his way toward him. Asher extended his hand for a handshake, and Herman clasped it firmly as he sized Asher up. My ability is Red Lightning Blood, Asher said, introducing himself plainly. Herman nodded and replied, my ability is called Amplifier. I can enhance anything, strength, speed, durability, or even magical power, depending on what I focus on. He gestured to the futuristic weapon strapped to his wrist. And this, he added with a grin, isn't just any gun. It uses gamma energy technology, not traditional gunpowder. So you can expect heavy firepower from me, he said smiling as Asher nodded. Asher's eyes flicked to the device, a sleek, sci-fi inspired gun with glowing blue etchings running along its barrel. Interesting, Asher commented, his tone neutral but intrigued.
Herman smirked. It's my trump card.
But I don't rely on it alone. I've taken down plenty of opponents with just my hands. Asher and Herman stood side by side, observing the bustling squads as they prepared. Herman glanced at Asher, noting the calm confidence in his demeanor. Despite being an E rank, Asher's aura made it hard to dismiss him. So, how do you want to play this? Herman asked, his tone curious but slightly skeptical. Asher crossed his arms and replied, you focus on amplifying our synergy. I'll handle direct combat. Use your ability to boost my attacks and cover for my weaknesses. Herman raised an eyebrow. You're not planning on holding back, are you? Even with my amplifier, an E-rank body will struggle against C-rank opponents. Asher smirked faintly. Let's just say I have a few surprises. Before Herman could question further, Renard's voice boomed across the field.
Squads fall in.
You're moving out. The teams began forming up and heading toward their designated positions in the training grounds. Asher and Herman followed, their expressions serious as they approached the Métis combat zone. This section was designed for realistic simulations of enemy invasions, with dense, rocky terrain and minimal cover. Miria and Renard stood on a raised platform, observing the proceedings. Miria's sharp blue eyes tracked Asher and Herman as they moved. She leaned toward Renard. You sure putting those two together is a good idea?
Renard chuckled. Trust me.
Herman's a wild card, and Asher. Well, you've seen how he holds his ground. This pairing might surprise even us. Miria's lips curled into a faint smile. We'll see. Asher and Herman's target, a C-rank Métis soldier, emerged from the simulated forest. The figure was humanoid but augmented with chitinous armor, glowing red eyes, and a vicious-looking blade for an arm. Its movement was swift and deliberate, giving off an air of menace. Time to see what you've got, Herman muttered, activating his amplifier. A faint blue aura surrounded him, and Asher immediately felt a surge in his body, strength, speed, and reaction time all heightened. The Métis soldier lunged toward them, its blade slicing through the air. Asher sidestepped gracefully, the amplified boost making his movements sharper. He retaliated with a precise strike aimed at the creature's joint, forcing it to stagger. Herman, meanwhile, provided cover fire with his energy gun, the amplified blast striking with enough force to keep the Métis off balance. You're faster than I expected, Herman admitted, firing another shot. But it won't go down easy. I know, Asher replied, his eyes narrowing. Time to test something. He activated his Red Lightning Blood ability, crackling red energy coursing through his veins and concentrating in his strikes. His movements became a blur as he closed the distance with the Métis soldier. With a flurry of lightning-enhanced strikes, Asher targeted weak points in the Métis' armor. The creature screeched as it began to falter, but it wasn't defeated yet. It adapted quickly, its blade arm transforming into a shield to block Asher's blows. Focus its defenses, Asher called out to Herman. Enjoy exclusive content from my virtual library empire.
Got it.
Herman adjusted his aim, sending a powerful amplified blast toward the Métis' shield arm. The impact shattered the shield, leaving the creature vulnerable. Asher seized the opportunity, delivering a final electrified punch to its core. The Métis soldier collapsed, defeated. These Métis sure are bastards, Asher said as he read through the report on their kind. Normally, the Métis race was a humanoid species, just a bit stronger than humans, and most of them had illusion-type abilities of various ranks. However, these particular Métis soldiers were abominations. They enhanced their lower-ranked abilities by combining their genes with those of other monsters. Like the one they had just killed, it had definitely been combined with an insectoid creature. That's why we can't let our world fall into their hands, Herman said, his voice firm. Asher nodded in agreement, his expression serious as they moved forward. Meanwhile, Renard and Miria had already taken care of the A and B rankers of this Métis outpost. Now they hovered mid-air, keeping a watchful eye on the squad members below, ready to intervene if necessary. The remaining C-rank Métis were spread out across the battlefield, their abominable forms a constant reminder of the genetic tampering they had undergone. Each squad member was engaged in intense combat, working together to bring down these formidable foes. Despite the challenge, they fought with determination, their training and teamwork evident in every coordinated attack. The battlefield was a chaotic but mesmerizing scene, alive with the clash of powers and strategies. Each squad moved as a single, cohesive unit, their individual talents blending into a symphony of combat that met the monstrous Métis abominations head-on. Every strike, every maneuver, showcased the relentless training and ingenuity they had developed to survive. Clara's hands wove intricate patterns in the air, summoning a whip of water from the surrounding moisture. The liquid weapon struck with deadly precision, coiling around the scorpion-like legs of the Métis hybrid and yanking it off balance. "Now!" she shouted, her voice carrying over the din. Jared responded instantly, slamming his fists into the ground. The earth trembled under his control, rising into jagged spikes that drove into the Métis underbelly. The creature hissed, its tail whipping forward, only for Nina to intercept. A blur of motion, she danced just out of reach, her daggers flashing in coordinated strikes as gusts of wind propelled her forward and back like a phantom. Reed stood further back, his hands crackling with electricity. A bolt of lightning arced from his fingertips, slamming into the Métis and leaving it paralyzed. The creature thrashed weakly, its exoskeleton steaming from the heat of the blast.
"Keep pushing," Reed yelled.
Behind them, Shira's hands glowed faintly with healing energy. A wounded Jared retreated for a moment, his torn arm bathed in her restorative light before he charged back into the fray. Together, they overwhelmed the grotesque hybrid, a fusion of human and scorpion, and ended its threat with a thunderous strike of Reed's lightning that shattered its armored tail. "These squad members are made up of pure elemental ability users," Renard said as Miria observed the teams in action. "They've got good synergy," she remarked, and Renard nodded in agreement. They then turned their attention to another remarkable team. "These ones sure know how to enjoy themselves," Renard chuckled, watching as the team cleverly used illusions against a race already known for their innate illusion abilities. Zara's laughter echoed eerily as shimmering duplicates of her team materialized, surrounding the wolf-like Métis with insect wings. The abomination snarled in frustration, its claws slicing through empty air as it lunged at illusions. "Keep it confused," Hero said, his eyes glowing with telekinetic focus. With a sharp gesture, he lifted a chunk of rubble and sent it hurtling into the Métis' side. Elena followed up, her shadowy tendrils wrapping around the creature, obscuring its vision and pinning its wings. "It's blind now, Marcus," she called. Flames roared to life in Marcus' hands as he unleashed a torrent of fire. The blue flames seared through the Métis' tough exterior, leaving cracks in its natural armor. Zara's illusions circled closer, keeping it distracted as Marcus stepped forward, intensifying the heat. Finn's bowstring hummed as he took aim, his enhanced sight picking out a weak spot in the Métis' neck. The explosive-tipped arrow flew true, embedding itself before detonating in a fiery burst that left the creature lifeless. "Another good team," Miria nodded, observing their performance as she made a note of their capabilities. Their role wasn't only to guide the team but also to identify and perfect eminent talents for the ongoing war effort. Hearing Miria, Renard looked at the team she was observing and nodded. "They really are good," he said as he watched them. Kai grinned as he dodged a swipe from a hulking Métis that resembled a beetle. "Is that all you've got?" he taunted, before planting his feet and delivering a thunderous punch to its midsection. The force sent the creature skidding back, crashing into a tree. Lena darted in next, her twin blades flashing as she sliced through the gaps in its armor. Her movements were a blur, the Métis unable to track her as she left shallow but numerous wounds in her wake. Tasha, standing at a distance, gestured with both hands. The metallic shards hovering around her shot forward, piercing the Métis from multiple angles. The creature screeched in pain, its acidic spray deflected mid-air by Tasha's magnetic barrier. Eli smirked as he froze the acidic spray, creating a wall of ice between the Métis and his teammates. With a flick of his hand, he summoned a barrage of icicles that rained down on the creature. Finally, Vera stomped the ground, the seismic wave rippling outward and destabilizing the Métis. It staggered, leaving it vulnerable for Kai to charge forward and deliver the finishing blow, smashing its head with a forceful strike. "These idiots," Renard muttered, shifting his eyes from one team to another. Not all teams were performing well. Among the exceptional ones were a few struggling groups who needed to be saved from time to time. Renard's gaze lingered on one team in particular, struggling against their Métis opponent. They were disorganized, with mismatched tactics and hesitation in their movements. One member, a young man with a sword, seemed to be struggling to control his swings, leaving openings for the Métis to exploit. Another, a woman with fire abilities, was too focused on blasting her way through, neglecting her teammates' safety.
Renard's brow furrowed.
They'll need guidance or they'll fail, he said under his breath, watching as the squad was forced to regroup. Miria, standing next to him, didn't need to say much. Her sharp eyes scanned the battlefield, already formulating a plan. We'll give them a few more minutes. If they can't pull it together, we'll step in.
Renard nodded.
But it shouldn't get to that point. They're supposed to be trained soldiers, not rookies. I don't have time to babysit them. His words were harsh, but he knew that every second counted in these battles. The squad faltered once again as the Métis monster lunged toward their weakest link. Renard didn't wait any longer. He raised his hand, signaling to the squad leaders at the top of the outpost. Moments later, a signal rang out. Miria, with her blue blood abilities, was already on her way, soaring toward the field to intervene.
Renard sighed.
Hopefully, a little intervention will remind them of what they're capable of. As Miria swooped in, the squad members immediately realized they had help. She landed between them and the Métis, her presence alone intimidating enough to draw the creature's attention. With a fierce wave of her hand, a blast of hellish blue flames erupted, cutting through the Métis' defenses and forcing it back. Stay tuned to my virtual library empire. The squad quickly adjusted, now following her lead. Their movements became more fluid, more coordinated, as they adapted to the new threat in front of them. Renard watched from above, arms crossed. That should be enough to get them back on track. They just need a little guidance from the top. Miria returned to his side, wiping the sweat from her brow. They'll be fine now. Sometimes, that push is all they need.
Renard gave a sharp nod. Good.
But next time, they better step up on their own. Relax, if we had all people like Asher and Herman, the war would have ended long ago, Miria said, as Renard relaxed and nodded. Yeah, you're right, he replied. As the Métis opponent fell to the ground, defeated by Miria's intervention and the squad's newfound coordination, Renard finally allowed himself a small smile.
He turned to Miria.
I can't say I'm impressed by their initial performance, but they'll get there eventually. Miria, her arms still crackling with the faint remnants of blue flames, nodded. It's all about learning how to lead in the heat of battle. Some of them are raw, but they have potential. They just need the right guidance. Renard's gaze shifted back to the other squads. He observed their ongoing battles with intense focus. If they want to survive the real wars, they can't rely on intervention every time. They need to learn quickly, adapt, and grow stronger. Miria's eyes narrowed as she surveyed the battlefield. That's true. But in times like this, a little nudge can save lives. We've all been there. As the last Métis fell in the outpost, the teams regrouped, their exhaustion evident but overshadowed by the sense of accomplishment. Both squads converged at the center of the battlefield, their weapons sheathed and their abilities finally at rest. Renard and Miria descended from their vantage point, their commanding presence drawing everyone's attention. Renard clapped his hands, signaling for silence. Good work, everyone, he began, his voice firm but not unkind. You all did well, but let me be clear, there's room for improvement. Most of you met expectations, but there were some exceptions. He paused, his gaze scanning the gathered soldiers. 2 or 3 teams stood out, showing exceptional coordination and skill, he said, nodding towards the squads in question. You've earned your recognition today. Keep up the good work, and you'll be the backbone of this war effort. Miria stepped forward, her sharp eyes sweeping over the group. However, she added, her tone steely, some of you clearly need to rethink your strategies. This was a controlled mission, but on a real battlefield, there's no room for sloppy mistakes. Take this as a lesson, improve or get left behind. The squads murmured among themselves, some visibly relieved, others stiff with embarrassment. Renard softened slightly.
For now, rest and recover.
We'll debrief in an hour. Until then, regroup and prepare for the next mission.
Dismissed.
They all returned to their respective quarters, retreating into the solace of their own spaces. The exhaustion from the battle weighed heavily on most of them, and many fell into a deep sleep almost immediately. However, a few chose to stay awake, their minds restless as they replayed the mission in their heads, analyzing the mistakes they had made. Determined to improve, they silently vowed to be better prepared for the next challenge. Amid the general air of recovery, a quiet buzz of newfound respect and curiosity filled the squads. The recent mission had brought to light talents and potential that some had previously underestimated. Subtle glances and quiet nods were exchanged in the halls, marking a shift in dynamics. For some, bonds were strengthened, for others, rivalries were quietly forged. In the far corner of one of the quarters, Asher sat on his bunk, his eyes closed as he meditated. Herman, seated nearby, tinkered with his plasma weapon, muttering about adjustments he could make for more precision. Their silence was comfortable, a reflection of the trust they had built during the battle. Meanwhile, Renard and Miria, in their private chambers, reviewed the day's events. Miria leaned back, sipping a cup of tea, while Renard pored over reports, his brow furrowed. "We've got a mix of potential and recklessness," he remarked. "But I'll admit, some of them surprised me today." Miria smirked. "That's the nature of war. Adversity brings out the best, and sometimes the worst, in people. Let's see who rises to the occasion." The night deepened, and the base slowly settled into a stillness, with only the occasional murmur or distant footsteps breaking the silence. The next morning brought a sharp contrast to the quiet night before. The base buzzed with activity as squads prepared for the next phase of operations. Each team gathered in their respective corners, discussing strategies and exchanging feedback. The air was filled with the sounds of clanking weapons, hushed murmurs, and occasional bursts of laughter, as camaraderie grew stronger after the shared trials. Asher and Herman stood near the training grounds, observing a new batch of recruits sparring under the watchful eye of an instructor. Herman leaned in slightly. "Look at them, all fresh and eager. They don't even know what they're stepping into." Asher nodded thoughtfully. "That's the point of this. We didn't know either, back when we started. It's the only way to learn, to face it head-on." Renard appeared nearby, holding a clipboard with a list of names. "You too," he called, motioning them over. "I need you to evaluate the recruits. We're short on time, and we need to know who's ready for real combat."
Herman grinned.
"Is this your way of saying we're the favorites now, Captain? Stay connected with my virtual library empire." Renard rolled his eyes but smirked. "Don't let it get to your head. You two barely scraped through yesterday without me and Miria stepping in." Miria approached, her sharp gaze sweeping over the grounds.
"He's right. Don't get complacent."
"There's no room for arrogance in this war. Speaking of which," she handed a folder to Renard, "new intelligence. We've located another Métis outpost, larger than the last. We'll need every available squad." Renard's expression turned serious as he scanned the contents of the folder.
"Understood.
"I'll brief the teams after lunch. This one's going to push them harder than anything they've faced before." Miria turned to Asher and Herman. "If either of you are hiding reserves of strength or strategy, now would be the time to let it out. This isn't just another skirmish, it's the start of something much bigger."
Asher's jaw tightened.
He exchanged a glance with Herman, who gave a curt nod. "We'll be ready," Asher said firmly. The rest of the day was spent in preparation. Teams sharpened weapons, polished strategies, and fortified their resolve. The atmosphere in the base shifted. It was no longer the cautious optimism of a small victory but the tense anticipation of a looming storm. When the briefing finally came, Renard stood before the assembled squads, his voice carrying weight.
"Listen up.
This isn't just a mission, it's a turning point. If we succeed, we'll cripple the Métis in this region. If we fail..." He paused, letting the gravity of his words sink in. "Failure isn't an option. We leave at dawn." The squads dispersed, their faces a mixture of determination and trepidation. Asher lingered near the map table, studying the layout of the outpost. Miria approached, her expression unreadable. "You've got the instincts of a leader, Asher," she said quietly.
"Don't waste them.
"Your squadmates look to you more than you realize." He looked up, meeting her gaze. "I'm not trying to lead, Miria. I just want to survive." She smiled faintly. Sometimes, that's all a leader needs to want. As the squads dispersed to prepare for the mission, Asher headed back to his quarters, his mind occupied with strategies for the upcoming battle. However, he couldn't ignore the subtle shift in the way people looked at him since the last mission. Whispers followed him, and squad members who previously saw him as just another recruit now gave him nods of acknowledgement, some even saluting. He brushed it off as battlefield camaraderie, but the truth was more complicated. The Magnus name carried weight, and Miria's open approval of him hadn't gone unnoticed. To be acknowledged by one of the elite, the Blue Terror herself, was practically a badge of honor in their world. Inside the training grounds, Asher noticed Miria observing him with her sharp, discerning gaze as she sparred with a few elite members of her squad. She fought with a fluidity that was almost hypnotic, her blue flames dancing around her with precision and control, a stark reminder of her title. When she finished, She strode over to him, her expression unreadable. "You've been attracting attention," she said bluntly, crossing her arms. Asher raised an eyebrow. "Can't say I've noticed. I've been too busy trying to stay alive." Miria smirked. "Humility is a nice touch, but don't overdo it. People are starting to expect more from you. Being a Magnus means more eyes on you, more pressure, more responsibility." "I didn't ask for that," Asher replied evenly. "No one asks for it," she said, her tone softening slightly.
But it's there.
"And I wouldn't waste my time training someone who didn't have the potential to rise to it." The weight of her words settled over him. Miria wasn't one to give compliments lightly, and her acknowledgement carried an unspoken challenge. Rise to the expectations or be crushed under them. Herman appeared, casually leaning against the wall nearby. "Wow, the Blue Terror personally mentoring the Red Magnus? Didn't think I'd live to see the day," he teased with a grin. Miria shot him a withering glare.
Don't get cocky, Herman.
"You're still just a support specialist." "Amplifier specialist," Herman corrected, unfazed. "And hey, if Asher here gets special treatment, maybe it'll rub off on me." Asher shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips despite himself. "You're already riding my coattails, Herman."
Don't push it.
Miria watched the exchange silently, then turned to leave. "Get some rest, both of you. Tomorrow's going to be brutal." Both of them nodded as they saluted her as she was leaving. The next morning came faster than expected. Asher barely got any sleep, his mind replaying Miria's words over and over. By the time he made his way to the assembly grounds, he felt a familiar mixture of nerves and determination settling in his chest. The squads were lined up, their gear polished and ready. Renard stood at the front, his sharp gaze sweeping over the soldiers. Miria was beside him, her presence commanding without the need for words. The faint glow of her blue flames danced subtly at her fingertips, a constant reminder of the power she held. Asher fell in line beside Herman, who looked unusually focused for once. "Didn't sleep, did you?" Herman asked, adjusting the strap of his weapon.
Does it show?
Asher replied, stifling a yawn.
A little.
"But don't worry, you'll be too busy dodging death to feel tired," Herman quipped with a grin. "Your journey continues at my virtual library empire." Renard's voice boomed across the assembly grounds, cutting through the murmur of conversations.
Listen up.
Today's mission is a coordinated strike on a key Métis outpost. Intelligence suggests their leadership has regrouped after yesterday's defeat. This will be tougher, smarter, and deadlier. He paused, his gaze locking on each soldier as if daring them to show weakness. This isn't just about survival. It's about sending a message. They're not safe, not even in their strongholds. Miria stepped forward, her voice colder but no less commanding. Each team will have specific objectives. Failures won't just cost lives, they'll cost momentum in this war. Don't make us regret putting faith in you. Her eyes landed briefly on Asher, a flicker of expectation passing between them before she moved on. Asher straightened his stance, the weight of her unspoken challenge pressing on him again. Renard continued, outlining the teams and their tasks. Asher and Herman were paired again, their objective to infiltrate a heavily guarded section of the outpost and disable a critical energy source powering the Métis defensive systems. "Stealth is key for you too," Renard said, pointing at them. "You'll be deep in enemy territory with limited support. Get in, disable the target, and get out. If you get caught, you won't last long."
Understood.
"Understood," Asher replied firmly, while Herman gave a confident nod. As the squads prepared to move out, Herman nudged Asher. "You know, for a guy who keeps saying he didn't ask for this, you sure look like you're ready to conquer the world." Asher smirked, a flicker of red lightning sparking at his fingertips. "Let's start with one outpost at a time." The squads moved silently through the dense forest surrounding the Métis outpost, the only sounds being the faint rustling of leaves and the soft crunch of boots against the ground. The tension was palpable, every soldier hyper-aware of their surroundings. Asher and Herman kept to the rear of their assigned group, their objective requiring them to break off once they reached the perimeter. Asher's thoughts were sharp, focused entirely on the task at hand. Miria's unyielding gaze from earlier still lingered in his mind, a constant reminder that this mission wasn't just about the war, it was about proving himself. Herman tapped him on the shoulder, snapping him back to the present.
We're close. Time to split off.
Renard's voice crackled faintly in their comms.
Herman, Asher, you're up. Keep it clean.
"Got it," Herman replied before glancing at Asher. "You ready for this?" Asher nodded, his face calm but his blood thrumming with anticipation.
Let's move.
The two broke away from the main group, slipping into the shadows of the thick foliage. The outpost loomed ahead, its towering walls constructed from a strange blend of organic and metallic material that pulsed faintly with energy. The eerie glow from within cast long shadows across the forest floor. The two broke away from the main group, slipping into the dense shadows of the thick foliage surrounding the outpost. The towering walls of the Métis structure loomed ahead, an unnatural fusion of organic and metallic material that seemed almost alive. Pulses of faint, eerie light emanated from the structure, casting long, flickering shadows across the forest floor. The air was thick with tension, every sound amplified in the stillness. Asher crouched low behind a fallen tree, his sharp eyes scanning for movement. Beside him, Herman activated a small device on his wrist, projecting a holographic map of the outpost. The map displayed their route to the energy core, a heavily guarded chamber at the heart of the structure. "The core should be here," Herman said in a hushed voice, pointing to the glowing mark on the map. "We'll need to sneak past multiple patrols and disable a few security systems. Shouldn't be too bad." Asher shot him a look, one brow raised. "You say that like this place isn't crawling with Métis soldiers."
Herman smirked.
"Where's the thrill if it's too easy?" Without another word, they began their infiltration. Asher led the way, his movements fluid and silent, his senses heightened by years of training and his sanguine supreme ability. The aura suppression it granted was invaluable here, rendering him nearly undetectable to the Métis' innate ability to sense energy signatures. Herman followed closely, his amplifier abilities subtly dimming the ambient light around them and muffling their movements further. The first checkpoint loomed ahead, a pair of Métis guards stationed near a narrow corridor. The guards were grotesque amalgamations of human and insect, their forms warped by the experiments that created them. One had bulging compound eyes and sharp mandibles, while the other's arms were encased in thick chitinous armor, ending in razor-sharp claws. Asher motioned for Herman to stop and leaned in close, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll take the one on the left." Herman nodded, silently drawing his plasma whip. Its faint hum was nearly imperceptible, a testament to his precise control over his enhancements. Asher moved first, his sanguine supreme shrouding him in near invisibility. His steps were so silent that the guard didn't even flinch as he approached. With lightning-quick precision, he struck, his fist crackling with faint red energy. The punch landed directly on the guard's midsection, the surge of lightning disrupting its internal systems. The creature convulsed and collapsed without a sound. Simultaneously, Herman lashed out with his whip, the plasma coil wrapping around the second guard's neck. With a quick, controlled flick, he delivered a surge of energy, severing the creature's head cleanly. The body slumped to the ground, lifeless. "Clean," Herman murmured, retracting his whip. "Don't get too comfortable," Asher replied, his eyes scanning the corridor ahead. "We're just getting started." They moved deeper into the outpost, each step deliberate and measured. Herman's amplifier ability extended their stealth, dulling the glow of the walls and masking the faint sounds of their breathing. They passed through narrow corridors and open chambers, avoiding patrols with a combination of precise timing and Asher's aura suppression. At one point, they encountered a group of Métis soldiers stationed near a control terminal. Asher paused, his crimson eyes narrowing. He reached out with his sanguine supreme, sensing the faint energy signatures emanating from the soldiers. Carefully, he manipulated their auras, creating a subtle disruption that made them momentarily disoriented. "Now," Asher whispered, gesturing for Herman to move. They slipped past the guards undetected, the faint hum of the terminal masking their movements. Once they were out of earshot, Herman let out a quiet breath. "You're really showing off tonight. Experience exclusive tales on my virtual library empire." "Focus," Asher said, though there was a hint of a smirk on his face. Finally, they reached the chamber housing the energy core. The room was massive, its walls lined with pulsating veins of glowing material. At the center stood the core, a towering construct radiating a strange, rhythmic hum that resonated in Asher's bones. Herman knelt near the control panel, pulling out a set of tools. "This'll take a few minutes. Cover me." Asher nodded, positioning himself near the entrance. He reached out with his ability, extending the suppression field to cloak both of them. The hum of the core seemed louder now, each second stretching into an eternity. Just as Herman bypassed the final lock, Asher caught the faint sound of approaching footsteps. He tensed, his senses honing in on the squad of Métis soldiers making their way toward the chamber. "We've got company," Asher whispered, his voice calm despite the tension. "Stall them," Herman replied, not looking up. "I just need another 30 seconds." Asher melted into the shadows, his aura invisible, his movements utterly silent. The first soldier entered the room, its insect-like eyes scanning for intruders. Asher struck from behind, a precise blow to the neck disrupting its systems. The creature crumpled silently, its companions none the wiser. One by one, Asher took them down, each strike precise and efficient. The last soldier paused, its head tilting as if sensing something was off. Before it could react, Asher was behind it, his hand crackling with faint red energy as he delivered the final blow. All done, Herman announced, standing up and dusting off his hands. Let's get out of here. Asher nodded, leading the way back through the labyrinthine corridors. The outpost was eerily quiet now, their path clear. They slipped back into the forest, the faint glow of the outpost fading behind them. Mission accomplished, Herman said, a satisfied grin on his face. Asher didn't reply, his focus already shifting to the next challenge. There were over 30 members of the Métis race standing in front of them, a mix of grotesque chimeras and one seemingly normal Métis leading the group. The leader's aura radiated with a palpable intensity, clearly marking him as a B-rank combatant. "So, you're the rats that sneaked inside, huh?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain as his sharp eyes locked onto Asher and Herman. Asher and Herman exchanged a quick glance, their expressions sharpening. They both knew the situation had escalated beyond stealth, the inevitable harsh combat was about to begin, and it's going to be hard fight as this normal Métis means he is awakened with a powerful rank illusion ability. "I'll take care of the leader. Just amplify my speed and strength," Asher said, his tone resolute.
Herman nodded.
"Got it," he replied, patting Asher on the back. Asher felt a surge of energy coursing through him, his body vibrating with newfound power. "I also amplified your endurance also," Herman added with a grin before turning his attention to the 29 Métis chimeras. His focus was sharp, ready to intercept any who tried to overwhelm them. Asher wasted no time, rushing toward the Métis leader like a lightning bolt. "Amuse me, human," the Métis leader taunted, vanishing in an instant, only to reappear behind Asher. But Asher had anticipated the move. He activated his Sanguine Supreme ability, sending a burst of crimson energy that illuminated his path like a deadly beacon. The blood-red glow coiled around him, making his movements almost impossible to follow. Meanwhile, Herman faced the chimeras, using his amplifier ability to create calculated openings. He dimmed their auras to confuse their senses and amplified his plasma whip to strike with brutal precision. One chimera lunged at him from the side, but Herman pivoted gracefully, using the whip to sever its clawed arm before delivering a final strike to its neck. Asher clashed with the Métis leader, trading blows at blinding speed. The leader's taunts became more frustrated as Asher evaded or countered each attack, his amplified strength allowing him to meet the Métis' power head-on. The air crackled with energy as Asher's red lightning surged around them, each strike leaving deep scorch marks on the ground. Amid the chaos, one of the chimeras attempted to sneak up behind Asher, but Herman intercepted it, sending a shock wave of amplified plasma that incinerated the creature mid-charge. "Watch your back, Asher," Herman shouted, his voice sharp.
"I'm fine."
Asher replied without breaking stride, his eyes locked on the leader. He feinted left, then delivered a devastating uppercut laced with crimson lightning, the impact sending the leader skidding back several meters. Asher didn't let up, closing the distance instantly to follow up with another strike. Herman, now outnumbered but holding his ground, amplified his agility, weaving through the enemy ranks while his whip flicked out like a serpent, incapacitating chimera after chimera. "You better finish that guy soon," Herman called out, sweat glistening on his brow as he dodged another clawed strike.
Asher smirked.
"Working on it." He focused, channeling the full force of his Sanguine Supreme into one arm. The crimson energy swirled violently as he lunged forward, his fist glowing brighter than ever. The Métis leader's eyes widened just before the blow connected, a thunderous impact ripping through the air. The leader was thrown back, crashing into the outpost wall with a deafening roar. The remaining chimeras hesitated, their confidence faltering as they saw their leader struggling to rise. Herman seized the opportunity, unleashing a final amplified wave of plasma that swept through the remaining foes, leaving the battlefield silent save for the crackle of dissipating energy. Asher exhaled, wiping blood from his knuckles as he turned to Herman.
"All clear." Herman grinned. "All clear."
"You." Asher glanced at the crumpled form of the Métis leader, now unconscious and battered. "Taken care of." The two exchanged a nod, but then suddenly crunching sound came, as Asher looked back and saw Métis leader injecting himself with something, and then he stood up, acting weirdly as his normal hands broke and two scythe-like came out of his hands. He is changing into chimera now. The Métis leader stood tall, his aura an oppressive wave of malice and strength. His hybrid form was monstrous yet refined, chitinous armor covered his body, and elongated limbs ended in razor-sharp claws. His eyes glowed a sinister green, and two insect-like wings on his back hummed faintly, ready to propel him in an instant. You dare to force me into this, the Métis sneered, flexing his claws. Though I have to say, this is quite the power. This should be amusing. Asher didn't waste time on words, rushing forward with lightning-infused speed. Herman amplified his strength, speed, and endurance in an instant, ensuring Asher could handle the ferocity of what was coming. The clash began with Asher's fist colliding against the Métis' claw. The shockwave of the impact sent dust and debris flying in every direction. The leader was fast, faster than Asher had anticipated. In the blink of an eye, the Métis vanished and reappeared behind him, swinging his claws in a deadly arc. Asher ducked just in time, countering with an uppercut charged with red lightning. The strike landed, forcing the Métis back a few steps, but the chitinous armor absorbed most of the blow. Not bad, the Métis growled, smirking. But you'll need more than that to harm me. Stay tuned for updates on my virtual library empire. The leader retaliated with a rapid series of strikes, his claws cutting through the air with terrifying precision. Asher dodged and blocked as best he could, but one slash grazed his side, leaving a shallow wound. The pain seared, but he gritted his teeth and stayed focused. Asher, focus on his openings. Herman shouted, lashing his plasma whip to drive the Métis back for a moment. The leader's wings buzzed, and he soared into the air to evade Herman's strike. Herman didn't let up. Amplifying the range of his whip, he lashed it upward, forcing the Métis to zigzag midair to avoid the crackling energy. Meanwhile, Asher leapt up with incredible speed, using the distraction to close the gap. The Métis noticed and twisted midair, bringing his claws down in a heavy swipe. Asher barely managed to parry with his arm coated in crimson energy, but the force sent him crashing back to the ground, creating a crater beneath him. Asher! Herman called out, lashing his whip again. This time, he aimed for the leader's wings, successfully severing one. The Métis snarled in pain and rage, landing heavily on the ground. Asher! Herman called out, lashing his whip again. This time, he aimed for the leader's wings, successfully severing one. The Métis snarled in pain and rage, landing heavily on the ground. You'll pay for that, the Métis growled, focusing his glowing eyes on Herman. He rushed forward, his speed blurring as he aimed a claw straight for Herman's chest. Herman braced himself, amplifying his defense just in time to block the attack with his whip, though the force sent him skidding backward. Asher, now's your chance. Enjoy more content from my virtual library empire. Asher, still recovering from the earlier blow, surged forward with renewed determination. His Sanguine Supreme ability activated fully, the crimson glow around him intensifying. He feinted left, drawing the Métis' attention, then pivoted right and delivered a devastating punch to the leader's side. The red lightning discharged on impact, causing a crack to appear in the chitin armor. The Métis roared, swinging wildly at Asher, who ducked and weaved through the onslaught. Each strike was closer than the last, one claw grazing Asher's shoulder, another narrowly missing his head. Asher retaliated with rapid punches, each one striking the cracked area on the armor, widening the fissure. I'm not done yet, the Métis bellowed, unleashing a pulse of green energy that knocked both Asher and Herman back. The force of the blast sent them tumbling across the battlefield. Herman groaned, struggling to his feet. He's tough but not invincible, he said, amplifying Asher's strength and endurance once more. You just need to keep pushing. Asher stood, blood trickling down his arm, but his resolve burned brighter than ever. He activated the second stage of his Sanguine Supreme, the crimson energy forming a sharp, blade-like aura around his arms. This ends now. The two clashed again, the battlefield erupting with flashes of red and green energy. Asher focused all his attacks on the weakened part of the Métis armor, each strike chipping away at the leader's defenses. The Métis fought back with relentless fury, landing blows that left Asher battered and bruised. Herman, sensing the opportunity, amplified Asher's speed to its absolute limit. Asher became a blur, dodging the Métis attacks and landing strike after strike. Finally, with one last burst of energy, Asher delivered a decisive blow to the leader's exposed chest, the crimson lightning piercing through and shattering the Métis' core. The leader staggered, his glowing eyes dimming as he fell to his knees. Impossible, he muttered before collapsing. Asher stood over the fallen foe, breathing heavily, his body trembling from exhaustion. Herman approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. You did it. Asher gave a faint smile. We did it. Herman chuckled, though his expression softened with concern as he took in Asher's battered state. You really pushed yourself to the edge there. We can't keep fighting like this without a plan for recovery. Asher nodded faintly, his energy waning. The crimson aura around him flickered before fading entirely, leaving only the dull ache of his wounds.
I know, he said, his voice hoarse. But we had no choice.
That thing would have torn through the others. Herman looked back at the battlefield. The air was thick with the aftermath of their clash: scorched earth, broken weapons, and the bodies of fallen Métis soldiers. The rest of their team was regrouping in the distance, tending to injuries and fortifying their position. We need to move, Herman said, urgency creeping into his tone. The Métis won't take this loss lightly. If their scouts report back, reinforcements could arrive any moment. Asher glanced at the fallen Métis leader, a flicker of doubt crossing his mind. What if this was just a distraction? Something about their movements felt coordinated. Like they were herding us here for a reason. Herman stiffened, his sharp gaze scanning the surroundings.
A trap. Maybe.
Or something worse. Asher's instincts rarely failed him, and the unease gnawing at him now felt impossible to ignore. We should search the area for clues before we retreat. Herman hesitated, weighing the risk. All right, but make it quick. I'll rally the others to watch the perimeter. Asher crouched beside the Métis leader's body, examining the shattered core. Its green glow had faded entirely, leaving behind only fragmented shards of a crystalline material. He reached out, gingerly picking up one of the larger pieces. It pulsed faintly in his hand, sending a strange sensation through his fingertips, a mix of warmth and unease.
What is this?
Asher muttered, holding the shard up to the dim light. He couldn't shake the feeling that the fragment was more than just a power source. It felt alive, as if it carried remnants of the Métis leader's will.
Find something.
Herman called, rejoining him after setting up the perimeter.
Asher handed the shard over. This.
It's not just a core fragment, it's resonating with something. I can feel it. Herman's eyes narrowed as he studied the shard. If the Métis are using something this advanced, it could explain their recent surge in strength. But why leave it behind? If this is as important as it seems, wouldn't they protect it?
Unless.
Asher's voice trailed off as a chilling thought struck him. Unless they wanted us to take it.
Herman's grip on the shard tightened. Damn it. A tracker.
We need to get rid of this thing now.
Asher shook his head. No.
If it's a tracker, we can use it to set our own trap. Lure them into a controlled area, even the odds. And if it's something worse? Herman asked grimly. Then we figure it out before it's too late.
Asher's resolve hardened.
Though, it is really a tracker with teleportation exit rune engraved on it simply means if one were to open a teleportation entering portal its exit will open where this core will be placed. A perfect way of infiltrating an enemy base, Asher thought after seeing it with the absolute appraisal of his. Though he can't say that out aloud, so he went with Herman as they continued their mission of retrieving the core back to team. As they walked toward their team, Asher couldn't shake the unease gnawing at him. The shard in Herman's grip wasn't just a tracker, it was a Trojan horse. With his absolute appraisal, he had seen the intricately engraved teleportation exit rune carved deep within the core fragment. If the Métis opened a portal, its exit would connect to wherever this shard was placed. It was a subtle but brilliant tactic to infiltrate their enemy's stronghold without resistance. Discover hidden tales at my virtual library empire. But Asher kept this revelation to himself for now. He needed time to think, to plan. Telling Herman outright would lead to questions he wasn't ready to answer. He also didn't want to alarm the team unnecessarily. Then they stealthily walked back to the squad, reuniting with the others. You two did great, even against that B-rank bastard, Renard said, and Miria also nodded in agreement. Now, hand me the core, he added, and Herman gave him the core. Renard looked at it closely. You guys are lucky to have gotten the Trojan core on your first attempt, he said, sounding impressed.
What do you mean, Captain?
Herman asked, his curiosity piqued. Renard turned to Asher with a knowing look.
You don't look surprised.
I sensed the spatial energy in it, Asher replied calmly. So I suspected it was something related to space. But hearing you call it the Trojan core, I now understand what you mean. Miria nodded, a faint smile on her face. Your senses are as sharp as ever, she said. Some of the other squad members frowned, their jealousy obvious, especially the boys, as Miria was widely admired. With her long silver-white hair and ruby-red eyes, she had the elegance of a beautiful princess, making her one of the most captivating captain of the squad. Captain Renard and Captain Miria gathered the squad in a safe location some distance from their previous battlefield. The air was tense with anticipation as they began setting up a carefully constructed trap. The team worked quickly under their captain's guidance, securing the area with layers of magical wards and physical reinforcements. Renard placed the Trojan core in the center of the trap. It shimmered faintly, its fragmented runes barely visible to the naked eye. Miria stepped forward, her elegant form commanding attention as she began weaving an isolation barrier around the core. "Watch and learn, newbies," Renard said, his voice calm but tinged with authority. "This isn't just about trapping an enemy. It's about outsmarting them." The squad watched as the isolation chamber took shape, Miria's graceful movements enhancing the intricate design of the barrier. The runes on the core flickered, dim at first, then suddenly pulsing with a soft green light. It was clear the core was scanning its surroundings for any presence. "Isolating it ensures the core detects no one in the vicinity," Miria explained, her ruby-red eyes focused on the glowing artifact. "Once it believes it's alone, it activates, thinking it's safe to release its full potential." As if on cue, the runes on the Trojan core flared to life, their intricate patterns glowing brighter with every passing second. A faint hum filled the chamber, resonating with power. The squad watched in awe as an ethereal holographic interface projected above the core, displaying unfamiliar symbols and glyphs. "It's working," Renard said with a smirk. "The Trojan core has activated." One of the newer recruits, a wide-eyed boy named Leon, hesitated before asking, "What does it do exactly, Captain?" Renard turned to him, his expression serious. "The Trojan core isn't just a power source. It's a decoy and a weapon combined. Once activated, it broadcasts false signals to lure enemies in. When they interact with it, it unleashes an explosive surge of spatial energy, enough to obliterate everything within range. But there's more." Miria picked up where he left off. "If used strategically, it can also disorient enemy forces, disrupt their communications, and create openings for us to strike. It's why it's called a Trojan core. It's as much a trap as it is a tool." The squad murmured among themselves, some in awe of the core's capabilities, others clearly uneasy about its destructive potential. Renard raised a hand to silence them. "This is a rare artifact, not something to be used recklessly. That's why we're testing it here under controlled conditions. Once we master its use, we'll have a significant edge against the Métis." Asher stepped closer, his gaze fixed on the glowing core. "How do we ensure it doesn't backfire on us?" "Good question," Renard said with a nod of approval. "The isolation chamber and the runes we're using are designed to stabilize its energy and limit its range. But it's still dangerous, so you'll need to rely on precision and teamwork when deploying it in the field." Miria glanced at Asher, a faint smile on her lips. "You'll likely pick it up faster than most. Your ability to sense spatial energy gives you an advantage here." Some of the squad exchanged glances, their jealousy of Asher flaring up again. He ignored it, his focus remaining on the core and the knowledge being shared. "All right, let's see how it responds to interference," Renard said. He gestured to Herman, who stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. Herman extended his whip toward the core, deliberately brushing it against the barrier. The moment the whip made contact, the Trojan core flared with an intense light. A shockwave of green energy rippled outward, but the barrier held firm, containing the surge. "Perfect," Renard said, grinning. "Now we know it's functioning properly. This baby's going to make the Métis think twice about messing with us." The team spent the next hour practicing maneuvers with the core, testing its triggers and responses under various conditions. By the end of the session, even the skeptics among the squad were beginning to see its potential. "Good work, everyone," Miria said, her voice carrying both authority and warmth. "We'll rest for now, but be ready. The Métis won't give us much time before they retaliate. Also, there is one another use that it is also an portal exit point, though it is hardly used, like 1 in a million times, as we can also use it from this side to infiltrate them, so they hardly use it," she added as everyone nodded. Asher remained silent, his mind racing. Miria's words confirmed his suspicions, but the squad was unaware of the true risk. It wasn't a 1 in a million chance. The teleportation exit rune was deliberately engraved, meaning the Métis intended to use it. Renard clapped his hands together. "All right, we wrap up here. Everyone, rest up. We'll move out at dawn." The squad began dispersing, but Asher lingered near the core, staring at its dimming glow. "You seem deep in thought," Miria noted as she approached, arms crossed. Asher exhaled, debating whether to reveal his concerns. "I just don't like relying on something we don't fully understand." Miria tilted her head. "We understand enough. The Trojan core is a weapon and a tool. If it ever activates as a portal, we'll be the ones using it first." That was the problem. Asher doubted they'd be the first ones to use it. Renard's voice cut in. "All right, enough overthinking. We've tested it, and now we rest. Move out." With that, the squad retreated to their camp, setting up shifts for night watch. For the next few days, The squad carried out mission after mission, each one pushing them further, sharpening their skills and testing their endurance. Some missions required full teamwork, like raiding Métis strongholds. These operations were fast and brutal, coordinated strikes that relied on their combined strength to overwhelm the enemy. Asher led the charge more than once, his sanguine supreme cutting through foes with terrifying precision, while Renard and Miria directed the battle, ensuring no one was out of position. Herman provided support, amplifying their strength at critical moments, turning near defeats into victories. Other missions were solo assignments. Asher found himself moving through enemy territory alone more than once, tasked with reconnaissance and sabotage. He stalked through the shadows, his senses sharp, avoiding detection with practiced ease. When necessary, he struck swiftly, eliminating targets before they could raise an alarm. There were times when brute force wasn't the answer, and stealth became their greatest weapon. Infiltration missions tested their patience, navigating enemy bases undetected, planting traps, stealing intelligence. Miria was particularly adept at these, moving like a ghost through Métis defenses, and Asher found himself partnering with her more often than not. But the battlefield wasn't always silent. Some days, the air was thick with the sounds of war, clashing steel, explosions, the cries of victory and defeat. Direct combat missions pushed them to their limits, facing waves of Métis warriors in relentless battles where only skill and strategy ensured survival. Each mission brought new challenges, new scars. Yet through it all, Asher noticed something troubling. The Métis were changing their tactics, adapting. Traps that once worked failed. Strongholds that should have been weak were reinforced. It was as if the enemy was learning from them. And then, on the eve of their next assignment, Asher felt it.
A shift in the air.
The same unease he had felt when they first acquired the Trojan Corps. Something was coming. Something bigger than all of them. The night before their next mission, Asher stood at the edge of the camp, staring into the darkness beyond. The wind carried a faint chill, rustling the trees in the distance.
It was quiet, too quiet. His unease hadn't faded.
If anything, it had only grown stronger. The Métis were adapting too quickly, their movements too precise. It was as if they had insight into the squad's tactics, their weaknesses. And then there was the Trojan Corps. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became that it wasn't a tool for them, it was bait. Asher, Miria's voice broke through his thoughts. He turned to find her standing beside him, her silver-white hair shimmering under the moonlight. Her ruby-red eyes studied him carefully. "You've been restless lately." Asher exhaled, crossing his arms.
"You don't feel it? The change?"
Miria's gaze lingered on him for a moment before she looked toward the horizon.
"I do," she admitted. "Something's shifting."
The Métis aren't acting like they used to. They're more organized, more deliberate. "That's what bothers me," Asher said. "They aren't just fighting back. They're anticipating us." Miria was silent for a moment, then sighed. "Then we need to be prepared for anything." Asher nodded, but the weight in his chest remained. At dawn, the squad gathered for their next assignment.
This one was different.
The mission details were vague, too vague. Their orders were to investigate a recently abandoned Métis outpost deep in enemy territory. No resistance was expected. That alone set off every alarm in Asher's mind. "All right, listen up," Renard said, addressing the squad. "This outpost was active until 3 days ago. Then, all traces of the Métis vanished. No fights, no signs of struggle.
Just gone.
Our job is to secure any intelligence left behind and figure out what happened." Miria stood beside him, arms crossed.
"Stay sharp.
If something feels off, trust your instincts. Explore more adventures at my virtual library empire." The squad nodded, but Asher could already tell he wasn't the only one feeling uneasy. They moved out in formation, trekking through the dense terrain. The journey was tense, each step echoing in the quiet. The deeper they went, the stronger Asher's unease became. The world around them felt wrong. Then they reached the outpost. It was exactly as described, empty.
Too empty.
Buildings stood intact, weapons and supplies scattered as if abandoned in a hurry. The air was thick with the metallic scent of old blood, but there were no bodies. No signs of a battle. No tracks leading away. "This isn't right," Herman muttered, gripping his whip.
"Spread out," Renard ordered.
"Check for any documents, recordings, anything that tells us what happened." Asher entered one of the main structures, his gaze sweeping the interior. Desks overturned, papers scattered. A flickering console at the far end caught his eye. He moved toward it, fingers tapping across the damaged screen. A broken log entry played. Phase 1 successful.
Core has been delivered.
Tracking system is operational. Asher's blood ran cold. Before he could react, the air behind him shimmered.
A spatial distortion.
He turned just as the Trojan core's runes flared to life.
And the portal opened.
A deep hum reverberated through the abandoned outpost as the Trojan core activated, its intricate runes pulsing with an eerie green glow. Asher barely had a moment to process before the distortion expanded, warping the very fabric of space. A gateway had formed.
Asher.
Get out of there. Miria's voice rang out through his earpiece, but it was too late. From within the portal, dark figures emerged, Métis warriors, their chitinous armor gleaming under the flickering lights. Unlike the ones they had fought before, these were different. Stronger. Their movements were unnervingly precise, their crimson eyes locked onto Asher as if they had been expecting him.
It was a trap.
Asher, fall back. Renard shouted, but Asher was already moving. He lunged backward, narrowly avoiding the first strike as a Métis warrior swiped at him with razor-sharp claws. The sheer force of the attack sent splinters flying from the ruined console. Without hesitation, Asher activated his Sanguine Supreme, his aura flaring to life with crimson energy. Lightning crackled around him as he retaliated, his fist colliding with the nearest warrior's armor. The impact sent a shockwave through the building, but the Métis barely staggered. Instead, it grinned, a terrifying, inhuman expression. They're absorbing kinetic force. Asher realized too late. The next attack came in an instant. A Métis warrior struck him square in the chest, sending him crashing through a wall and into the open courtyard. Dust and debris rained down as he forced himself to stand, blood dripping from his temple. The squad was already engaging. Renard and Herman fought side by side, using coordinated strikes to keep the warriors at bay. Herman's whip lashed out, wrapping around one enemy's leg before he amplified its weight, sending the Métis crashing into the ground. Renard followed up with a precise lightning-infused strike, piercing through its exposed joint. Miria, moving like a phantom, weaved between enemies, her twin daggers coated in shimmering blue fire. Each slash left burning marks on their armor, her attacks targeting their weak points with terrifying accuracy. But the Métis weren't just attacking blindly.
They were copying.
One warrior suddenly mimicked Renard's lightning strike, its body surging with electrical energy as it countered his attack. Another Métis, after barely dodging Miria's flames, shifted, its exoskeleton darkening as if to resist the heat. Asher's mind raced. This wasn't a standard attack force. These Métis weren't just strong, they were learning.
Evolving.
We can't fight them head-on for long, he called out. They're countering everything too quickly. Renard gritted his teeth. Then we changed tactics.
Miria with me. Herman support.
The squad adjusted, shifting into defensive positions, but Asher's eyes were still on the portal.
It hadn't closed.
And something else was coming through. The air grew heavy as a towering figure stepped through the rift. Unlike the others, its presence alone sent a chill down Asher's spine. This was no ordinary warrior. The Métis commander had arrived. Its blackened armor glowed faintly with engraved runes, each pulse sending waves of pressure across the battlefield. A low, guttural voice resonated from within its helm. You took what belongs to us. Asher clenched his fists, crimson energy crackling around him. He could feel it, the sheer power radiating from the commander. The battlefield fell into a tense silence as the Métis commander fully emerged from the portal, its sheer presence enough to make the air feel suffocating. You took what belongs to us, it repeated, its deep, distorted voice reverberating through the ruins.
The Trojan core.
Asher's mind worked fast. If the Métis wanted it back this badly, then its value was beyond just a weapon or a trap. The core was part of something much larger, something the Métis couldn't afford to lose. But there was no time for theories. The commander raised its massive clawed hand, and the surrounding warriors suddenly stopped their attacks, stepping back in eerie unison. It was giving them a direct order. Then, in an instant, it vanished. A blur of black and red shot toward him.
Fast. Too fast.
Asher barely managed to react. He crossed his arms in defense as the impact hit, a devastating blow to his midsection that sent him hurtling backward. He crashed through a crumbling structure, his body skidding across the dust-covered ground. Pain flared through his ribs. That was just one hit.
Asher.
Miria's voice was sharp with concern, but he forced himself up, spitting out a bit of blood. He didn't have the luxury of resting. The Métis commander didn't stop. It was already above him, dropping down like a thunderstrike. Asher twisted his body, rolling to the side just as the enemy's fist obliterated the ground where he had been. A shockwave erupted, sending dust and debris flying.
Asher, fall back. Renard ordered.
No, Asher growled, his body already moving.
He couldn't retreat.
Crimson lightning surged around him as he activated the second stage of Sanguine Supreme. His aura sharpened, his muscles coiled like springs, and the world slowed just enough for him to react. The commander turned, its glowing red eyes narrowing slightly.
It was assessing him. Asher struck first.
He launched forward, his fists glowing with condensed lightning, and threw a devastating right hook. The commander blocked, barely. A shockwave erupted between them, cracking the ground beneath their feet.
But Asher wasn't done.
Using the recoil, he spun and delivered a brutal axe kick to its side, forcing the Métis back a step.
A step.
That was all he had managed. The realization barely had time to register before the commander retaliated.
It backhanded him.
Asher barely had time to register the strike before he was airborne again. He smashed into a nearby pillar, pain flaring through his entire body. Asher, we're coming.
Herman shouted.
No, stay back. Asher gritted his teeth, pushing himself off the rubble.
They couldn't fight this thing head-on.
The commander tilted its head slightly.
It was waiting. Studying him. It's testing me.
A cold chill ran down Asher's spine. It wasn't fighting at full power. Miria and Renard moved in from opposite sides, striking in perfect synchronization. Renard's lightning-infused spear thrust forward, while Miria's daggers curved toward the commander's blind spot. For the first time, the Métis commander moved defensively. It twisted its body, dodging Miria's slash by mere inches while deflecting Renard's spear with its armored forearm.
Sparks flew as steel met chitin. Keep pushing. Renard shouted.
The squad pressed forward, their attacks relentless. Herman lashed out with his whip, amplifying its force to destabilize the enemy's footing. Miria weaved in and out of its defenses, landing precise, shallow cuts across its armor.
But it wasn't enough.
The commander's movements grew sharper.
Faster. It adapted.
With one brutal motion, it caught Renard's spear mid-thrust and twisted, yanking him off balance before delivering a devastating kick to his chest. Renard coughed blood as he was sent flying. Miria's eyes widened, but she reacted instantly, flipping backward before the commander's follow-up strike could reach her.
Asher, she called.
He was already moving. He blurred forward, crimson lightning trailing behind him as he focused everything into his next strike. His entire body pulsed with energy, his Sanguine Supreme reaching its peak. He feinted left, just like before. The commander shifted in anticipation. Then, at the last second, Asher twisted his body and went right, bringing down his lightning-coated fist with every ounce of power he could muster. His knuckles connected. A deafening crack echoed as the impact shattered through the commander's armor, sending it skidding back. It was wounded. But the moment of victory was short-lived. The commander laughed. A deep guttural sound that sent a chill through the battlefield. It had been waiting for this. Before Asher could react, the Trojan core at the commander's feet shattered, its runes igniting in a violent pulse of green energy.
A portal began to rip open. Asher,
get out of there.
Miria shouted. Too late.
A sudden force dragged him in. The world warped around him, and then
darkness.
Asher felt himself drifting in darkness, weightless and disoriented. Then suddenly a powerful force pulled at him, and before he could react, he was hurled through the void.
Cook.
Pain exploded in his chest as his body slammed into something solid. His ribs rattled, his organs screamed in protest, and his momentum sent him rolling uncontrollably across rough terrain.
Splash.
The sensation of cold water engulfed him.
He was sinking.
Asher tried to move, but his body refused to respond. Every inch of him ached, his bones felt as if they had been shattered, and the pain was unbearable.
Worse yet, he couldn't breathe. Panic set in.
He flailed, trying to propel himself upward, but even his frantic movements were nothing more than weak twitches. His limbs were unresponsive, his strength drained. He tried to channel mana to float himself up, but the moment he attempted to circulate it, agony. A sharp, unbearable pain ripped through his entire body. His mana veins were blocked, damaged from the injuries he had sustained. Even the slightest attempt to use his abilities sent a fresh wave of pain crashing over him.
Fuck.
Asher cursed in his mind, feeling the life slipping away from his body.
His lungs burned.
The suffocating pressure of the water pushed down on him, stealing what little air remained in his chest. Is this how it ends? He thought bitterly, his vision beginning to blur. Memories flashed before his eyes.
His past.
His struggles. His battles. His victories. His regrets.
Not again.
A desperate thought surged through him. His body descended deeper, the riverbed drawing closer.
He had to move. He had to survive. But his body wouldn't obey.
The gentle rustling of leaves filled the air as a cool breeze swept through the quiet village. Nestled between rolling green hills and a crystal-clear river, the village was a picture of serenity. Modest wooden houses with thatched roofs stood in neat rows, their chimneys releasing thin wisps of smoke as the scent of freshly baked bread and herbal remedies drifted through the streets. Children played near a small stone fountain in the village square, their laughter mingling with the soft chimes of wind bells hanging from porches. Farmers tended to their crops, while others prepared for the evening by lighting lanterns, their warm glow illuminating the narrow dirt pathways. In one of the larger houses near the river, the scent of medicinal herbs lingered in the air. Inside, a dimly lit room held a simple wooden bed, its sheets clean but slightly rough. Asher lay there, wrapped in bandages from head to toe. His breathing was slow and steady, though his body bore the signs of his ordeal, bruises, cuts, and a deep exhaustion that ran far beyond the physical. A small table beside the bed held a damp cloth, a bowl of herbal paste, and a half-empty cup of tea. The flickering glow of a single candle cast long shadows across the room, its light dancing over the rough wooden walls. The faint sound of water flowing outside, combined with the chirping of crickets, created a soothing lullaby. Near the bed, a young woman sat quietly on a stool, watching over him. Her silver hair shimmered in the dim light, and her gentle ruby eyes reflected both concern and curiosity. She reached out, pressing the back of her hand against his forehead. Still warm, but no longer burning. She let out a relieved sigh. At least the fever has gone down, she murmured to herself. Asher remained unconscious, trapped in dreams, or perhaps memories. But for now, in this tranquil village, he was safe. Serena stood up and stepped out of the room. Outside, a middle-aged man was grilling some beast meat over an open flame. Seeing her approach, he glanced up and asked, "How is the kid?" Serena shook her head. "He seems fine, but he has yet to regain consciousness," she replied.
Sigh.
The middle-aged man let out a deep sigh, shaking his head. "I wonder who could be so cruel. All his bones were broken, as if he had been tortured," he muttered, his expression dark with concern. Serena nodded solemnly.
"Don't worry, father.
I will continue to take care of him. After all, I am the village healer." She puffed out her chest with pride. Miles, her father, chuckled at her enthusiasm. With a grin, he lifted his daughter onto his broad shoulders and patted her on the back.
"You're my little pea," he teased.
Serena's cheeks flushed red. "Dad, I'm not a child anymore," she huffed, quickly hopping down from his shoulders. Miles sighed dramatically. "Sigh, now my daughter won't even play with this old man anymore."
He sniffled as if heartbroken.
Serena pouted, not liking his antics, and quickly walked away. Watching her leave, Miles smiled. "You should stop teasing her so much," came another voice. A woman approached, carrying a handful of spices. She handed them to Miles, who looked at her with warmth in his eyes. "You know how our world is, Lily. These small moments are what give us happiness. You never know if tomorrow we might."
He trailed off.
Lily shook her head, exasperated. "Stop being so dramatic," she chided before heading toward the room where Asher was sleeping. "How's the kid you fetched from the river yesterday?" she asked. Miles poked at the roasting meat and replied, "He's stable but still unconscious." Lily sighed, her expression softening.
"Poor kid.
I just hope he won't be too scared when he wakes up. Whoever did that to him must have been truly cruel." Miles nodded grimly, his gaze fixed on the flickering flames. "Yeah, and if he's running from something, it might not be long before trouble follows." The whole family assumed Asher's condition was the result of torture. After all, he had been thrown from a considerable height, and even before that, his battle with the enemy commander had been anything but easy. His opponent had been an S-rank, a monster in combat, and the injuries Asher had sustained during their fight had already pushed his body to its limits. The brutal fall had only worsened his condition, leaving him covered in wounds severe enough to break even a fully grown man. It was no wonder the couple believed he had been subjected to unspeakable torment. As the days passed, the villagers continued to care for Asher with unwavering dedication. Serena, the village healer, checked on him daily, changing his bandages and ensuring his wounds were healing properly. Though his injuries were severe, her skilled hands and the use of herbal medicine helped prevent infections and soothe his pain. Miles, the village hunter, made sure he had the best meals possible, roasting fresh meat over an open fire. His wife Lily prepared warm soups infused with medicinal herbs, carefully feeding Asher small spoonfuls to keep his strength up. Though he remained unconscious, his breathing had stabilized, and the color slowly returned to his face. The village was a peaceful, idyllic place, surrounded by lush forests and rolling hills. Thatched roof houses dotted the landscape, smoke rising from chimneys as families gathered around their evening meals. Children played near the riverbanks, their laughter echoing through the village, while the hunters returned from their expeditions, carrying fresh game. Every night, Serena would sit by Asher's bedside, watching over him with quiet determination. She often wondered who he was, where he had come from, and what horrors he had endured to end up in such a battered state. She had never seen anyone so gravely wounded survive this long.
A full week passed.
Then, on the seventh night, just as the village settled into its usual peaceful rhythm, Asher's fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered, his breath hitched, and with a pained groan, his consciousness finally began to return. Asher's eyes fluttered open as he stared at the unfamiliar ceiling.
"Where is this?" he mumbled, his voice hoarse.
He tried to move his body but winced as pain shot through him. Gritting his teeth, he swiftly accessed his inventory and retrieved a healing potion, gulping it down in one motion. The warm sensation of the potion spread through his body, easing some of the pain. "I'm in a house," he muttered, glancing around the room. Sunlight streamed through a small window, casting soft shadows on the wooden walls. As he tried to assess his situation, he suddenly heard the click of a door opening. His instincts took over immediately. In a flash, his blood scythe materialized in his hands, his grip firm as he prepared to retaliate against any potential threat.
"You're awake," a gentle voice called out.
Asher turned sharply to see a young woman standing at the doorway, completely unfazed by the crimson scythe in his hands. She smiled sweetly, her golden eyes filled with relief rather than fear.
"Who are you?"
Asher asked, his tone sharp as he kept the weapon pointed at her.
"My name is Serena."
"And don't worry, you're safe here for now," she replied calmly. Asher scrutinized her carefully. She was weak, not even at the awakening rank, merely at the diamond realm of the foundation rank. He saw no threat in her, which was the only reason he lowered his scythe, though he remained on guard. "Where is this?" he asked, his voice steadier now. "You're in Mint Leaf Village," Serena answered. She then added, "My father found you in the nearby river when he was hunting a predator that had been harassing the villagers. After he killed it, he dove in to retrieve its body from the lake's depths, and that's when he found you as well." Asher listened silently as she continued. "My father said you were lucky. If he hadn't found you, who knows how much longer you would have remained at the bottom of the lake, or if you'd have survived at all." Asher processed her words carefully.
"What continent is this?" he asked. "This is the Mirian continent," she replied. Asher frowned. "Which one?"
Serena blinked in confusion. "Mirian," she repeated, as if he should already know. Ignoring her, Asher placed his hand on the ground and activated absolute appraisal. Location analysis. Current location, Village Hunter's House. Region, northeast of Palax Kingdom. Palax Kingdom is located in the southern region of the Mirian continent. Mirian continent is part of the world of Grihaean. Fuck, Asher cursed inwardly, his eyes narrowing at the results from absolute appraisal. This wasn't just some remote part of his world. He was in an entirely different world altogether. Serena, on the other hand, was immediately distracted by the strong aroma that hit her nose the moment she stepped through the door. Her keen senses quickly located the source, a small potion bottle placed beside Asher's bed. She picked it up and took a deep sniff. Her eyes widened in astonishment.
"What is this?" she gasped.
She turned to Asher with an expression of pure disbelief. Holding up the bottle, she examined it closely. Such purity, such a perfect combination, such an incredible potion. She mumbled in awe. Asher, noticing her reaction, instinctively raised his guard, but before he could fully process what was happening, Serena had already rushed to his bedside. Her bright, puppy-like eyes stared at him in excitement, her face mere inches from his own. Asher unconsciously took a step back, but she quickly grabbed his arm, pressing further. "Can you tell me where you got this?" she asked, holding up the now empty potion bottle he had just used. "It's mine," Asher replied calmly. This potion wasn't something ordinary. It was something he himself had created using his black assimilation and blood elixir skills. By combining those two abilities, he had produced a supreme quality health potion, capable of healing not only physical wounds but also mana depletion, speed fatigue, and even neutralizing poisons. Serena's eyes sparkled with even more excitement. "You made it?" she asked, leaning in even closer. "So you're an alchemist?" Asher now found himself backed against the wall, while Serena's eager face inched closer and closer to his. Feeling slightly overwhelmed, he placed a hand on her forehead and pushed her back slightly. Shouldn't you at least introduce yourself properly before asking me so many questions? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Serena blinked in realization before straightening up.
Oh, right.
I forgot. She quickly stepped back and placed her hands on her hips. My name is Serena, the best healer in this village, she declared proudly, puffing out her chest. Asher's gaze instinctively flickered downward. Serena immediately noticed where his eyes had gone. Her face turned bright red, and she quickly shielded herself with her arms.
What are you looking at? She stammered.
Asher rolled his eyes. Weren't you the one who puffed out your chest in the first place? He replied, crossing his arms. Serena's face burned even redder.
And now? Why you're fine.
I'll go tell Mom, she blurted out, stumbling over her words before spinning around and dashing out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Asher sighed, shaking his head.
Damn it, he muttered.
Turning his attention back to himself, he clenched his fist, testing his body's condition. His wounds had mostly healed, though he could still feel some residual pain. But what concerned him more was the information he had just learned. No wonder they sent a general after that Trojan core. He mumbled, his eyes darkening. That artifact had led him to an entirely different world. And he had never heard of any place called Grihaen. I have to find a way to go back, Asher mumbled as he sat on the bed. His first instinct was to use absolute appraisal, hoping to find any clue about how to leave this world. However, no answers appeared. Frustrated, he shifted his focus to the Legacy Hall, searching for any recorded method to travel from one world to another. But once again, he found nothing.
Damn it,
he muttered, clutching his head. His thoughts raced before he finally called out, System, can you help?
Silence.
System. He called again, but there was still no response. Just as he was about to give up, a message finally appeared before him. Host has only one choice now, to grow stronger and travel back to the host's original world. Asher's eyes lit up.
Really?
I can do that? He asked, finally seeing a possible way home.
Yes.
After reaching the peak of the Awakening Realm, also known as the Mortal rank, one can step into the Transcendent rank. At the third level of this rank, known as the Void stage, it becomes possible to travel between worlds without any danger. Asher absorbed the information, his mind working quickly. A realm above the Awakening rank, huh? He muttered. So this means, this world is much stronger than Volarisa, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Here, the peak of the Transcendent realm has 7 stages in total. Asher clenched his fists. This world was far beyond what he had imagined. If he wanted to return, he had no choice but to climb higher than ever before. Asher exhaled deeply, his mind settling on a single thought. He needed to grow stronger. His current injuries made it impossible to train, so for now, all he could do was gather as much information as possible.
A few minutes later, the door creaked open.
Serena peeked inside, her face still slightly flushed from their earlier interaction. Seeing Asher awake, she smiled and walked in. You seem lost in thought, she said, placing a small wooden tray on the bedside table. The tray held a bowl of steaming soup, a few herbal leaves, and a clay cup filled with what smelled like medicinal tea.
Eat up.
Mom said you need to regain your strength. Asher nodded, picking up the spoon. He didn't particularly need normal food. His assimilation skill allowed him to sustain himself through mana-rich substances, but refusing would only make them suspicious. He took a sip of the soup, and to his surprise, it wasn't bad. This world, the mana density here is insane, he muttered. Even the food had traces of pure energy in it, something unheard of back in Volrisa. Serena, who had keen hearing, caught his words.
Of course.
The Mirian continent is one of the richest lands when it comes to mana, she said proudly. Our village may be small, but even we have mana-infused herbs growing naturally. Asher took another sip, his mind processing the implications. If even a small village like this had access to mana-rich materials, then what kind of powerhouses existed in this world's major kingdoms? As he finished his meal, Serena sat down beside his bed, watching him curiously. You don't talk much, do you? She said, resting her chin on her hand. Asher simply shrugged. Serena giggled. You're really different from the boys here. Most of them won't shut up, especially when they see a pretty girl like me. She smirked, flipping her hair dramatically.